the world we build together. In the quiet solitude of this moment, it is easy to feel like an individual, a single self-contained consciousness. But the you that is listening right now is, in a profound sense, a collective creation. The language you think in, the concepts you understand, the values you hold, the very sense of who you are, all have been shaped, nurtured, and defined by your immersion in a social world. This is the fundamental premise of our exploration tonight. Much of the reality we take for granted is not a physical given, but a social reality, a world we build together through a complex and often unconscious interplay of psychology, culture, and interaction. This shared reality is humanity's greatest achievement, the very foundation of civilization. It allows us to cooperate on a massive scale to build cities, create art, and develop science. But this same psychological machinery that binds us together into cooperative tribes, into a cohesive us, is also the very machinery that so easily and tragically divides us from them. Our journey over the next 3 hours will be an exploration of this profound duality. We will delve into the science of social reality, examining the invisible architecture of our collective lives. We will begin by exploring the concept of the social construction of reality itself, questioning how things with no objective physical existence, like money, marriage, or nations, can have such immense power over our lives. We will then journey into the very heart of group psychology, into the deep, evolutionary roots of tribalism. We will see, through elegant and sometimes disturbing experiments, how easily our minds create ingroups and outgroups, how readily we can form an us and a them, based on the most trivial of distinctions, a phenomenon known as the minimal group paradigm. From this foundation, we will explore the darker consequences of this groupish psychology, the formation of stereotypes, the feeling of prejudice, and the act of discrimination. We will look at classic psychological studies like the Robbers Cave experiment, which demonstrated how easily intergroup conflict can be ignited, and more hopefully, how it can be resolved through shared goals. We will also explore the contact hypothesis, a framework for understanding how prejudice can be reduced through meaningful interaction. Our exploration will then turn to the powerful forces that maintain cohesion within our tribes. We will confront the unsettling psychology of conformity, as revealed in the famous Ash experiments, showing our tendency to doubt our own eyes to fit in with the group. We will grapple with the even more disturbing psychology of obedience, as shown in the Milgram experiments, revealing how ordinary people can be compelled to commit harmful acts under the pressure of authority. We will see how our very sense of self is tied to the groups we belong to, through the lens of social identity theory, and how modern technology can amplify our tribal tendencies through the creation of echo chambers and filter bubbles. In the final third of our journey, we will investigate the dynamics that shape our collective minds. We will explore how beliefs and ideas spread like viruses through social networks, a concept known as memetics. We will look at the nature of charisma and leadership, the psychology of ideology, and the deep moral foundations that underlie different political and cultural tribes. We will examine the forces that bind us, like empathy, trust, and shared rituals, and the forces that tear us apart, like dehumanization, betrayal, and the psychology of scapegoating. Finally, we will contemplate the path forward. We will revisit the bystander effect in a social context, appreciate the profound power of a dissenting voice, and explore the possibility of transcending tribalism to build a more inclusive, global US. The mindfuck at the heart of this entire exploration is the realization that this solid social world we inhabit, our nations, our cultures, our political divides, our economic systems, is ultimately built on a foundation of shared psychological phenomena. It is a collective dream, a story we are all telling and retelling each other every day. This reality is powerful, but it is also malleable. By understanding the underlying psychological principles, we gain a new perspective on the world and our place within it. We can begin to see the invisible currents that shape our beliefs and behaviors. This journey is not intended to be a political or moral lecture. It is a quiet, contemplative exploration of the science of our social nature. The goal is to foster understanding, not judgment. By looking at these often uncomfortable truths about our group psychology with a calm and detached awareness, we can reduce their unconscious power over us. We can learn to see the tribal impulses in ourselves and others with a greater degree of compassion and wisdom. This understanding, this expanded perspective, can be a profound source of inner peace. It is a form of deep relaxation that comes from seeing the bigger picture, from understanding the rules of the complex human game we are all playing together. As you begin to fall asleep, Let go of the idea of yourself as a purely individual, isolated being. Gently acknowledge the profound ways you are connected to and shaped by the people and the culture around you. See the social world not as a fixed, external reality, but as a dynamic, flowing river of shared beliefs, norms, and identities, a world we build together. Find peace in this sense of connection, and prepare your mind to explore the secret rules that govern this vast, intricate, and deeply human reality. The social construction of reality. Let us begin our exploration with a foundational and deeply mind-bending concept: the social construction of reality. Consider the piece of paper or the digital number in your bank account that you call money. What gives it its power? It has very little intrinsic physical value. You cannot eat it or build a shelter with it. Yet, it can be exchanged for almost anything. The value of money is not in the object itself. It is a collective agreement, a shared story, a promise we have all made to each other to accept it as a medium of exchange. Money is a social construct. Its reality is not physical but intersubjective. It is real only because we all collectively believe it is real. This is a profound secret that reveals the nature of much of our social world. The institutions, identities, and concepts that govern our lives, from nations and corporations to marriage and gender roles, are not natural or objective facts of the world, but are realities that have been actively and often unconsciously built together by humans through a process of shared agreement and belief. This psychology mystery questions the very line between objective fact and social fiction, inviting deep relaxation by revealing the powerful, creative, and often invisible role of collective belief in shaping our world. The theory of the social construction of reality was famously articulated by sociologists Peter L. Berger and Thomas Luckman. They argued that while there is an objective physical reality, the reality of mountains, trees, and physical laws, our experience of the world is always mediated through a layer of socially constructed meaning. We are born into a pre-existing social world that provides us with categories, concepts, and a language to make sense of our experience. We internalize this social reality through socialization, learning from our parents, our schools, and our culture what is considered real, true, normal, and valuable. This process often happens so completely that we mistake the social constructs for objective reality. We come to believe that our specific cultural understanding of time, e.g., a 7-day week, of family, e.g., the nuclear family, or of success, e.g., material wealth, is the natural way of things. The social constructionist perspective invites us to see these as cultural artifacts, as specific versions of reality that have been built by societies over time, and that could have been built differently. Think of the concept of a nation. There is no line on the physical surface of the earth that intrinsically separates one country from another. A border is an imaginary line, a social construct, that has immense power only because a sufficient number of people agree to recognize its authority. This shared agreement allows governments to raise armies, collect taxes, and regulate the movement of people. The nation is a powerful reality, but it is a reality built entirely on shared belief and collective storytelling. This applies to many of the identities that we hold most dear. Concepts of masculinity and femininity, for example, vary dramatically across cultures and historical periods. What is considered a manly virtue in one culture might be seen as a weakness in another. This suggests that while there may be biological differences between the sexes, our understanding of gender roles, how men and women are supposed to behave, is a social construct, a script that we learn and perform. Similarly, concepts of race, while often linked to physical characteristics, are primarily social categories whose meanings and boundaries have been created and have shifted throughout history, often to justify systems of power and inequality. The categories are not given by nature, they are created by human societies. The mindfuck of the social construction of reality is the profound realization of how much of our world, and our sense of self, is built upon these shared, often invisible, agreements. It questions our sense of objectivity and naturalness. It suggests that we are all, in a sense, co-authors of the reality we inhabit. This can be a destabilizing thought. If our most cherished institutions and identities are made up, does that mean they are not real or that they are meaningless? The answer is a crucial no. To say something is socially constructed is not to say it is not real. Social reality is an incredibly powerful and tangible force. A socially constructed border can stop an army. A socially constructed economic recession can cause immense real-world suffering. The power of a social construct lies not in its physical substance, but in the strength of the collective belief that sustains it. The rules of a game are made up, but they are absolutely real for the players playing the game. Our social reality is the game we are all playing together. The psychology mystery lies in how this process of construction happens and is maintained, largely unconsciously. We are like fish who are unaware of the water we swim in. Our social reality provides the very categories and language through which we think, making it incredibly difficult to see beyond it. It is maintained through daily social interactions, through media, through education, through law, all of which constantly reinforce the shared definitions of reality. When someone violates a powerful social norm, the strong reaction they receive from others is a demonstration of the system working to maintain its own coherence. Understanding the social construction of reality has profound and liberating implications. It allows us to denaturalize our world, to see that many of the things we take for granted as the way things are, in fact, the way things have been made to be. This opens up the possibility for change. If a reality is socially constructed, it can also be socially deconstructed and reconstructed. This is the basis of all social and political progress. Movements for civil rights, women's suffrage, or marriage equality have all been, at their core, struggles over the definition of social reality, struggles to change the shared story about who counts as a full citizen, who has rights, and what constitutes a valid family. As you continue to fall asleep, let the solid world of social facts gently soften. See the institutions, the roles, the identities, the rules of your world not as fixed and inevitable, but as a vast, intricate web of shared agreements, a world we build together. Acknowledge the immense power of this collective belief system, and your own role, however small, in maintaining it through your daily actions and beliefs. Find deep relaxation in this profound insight. It does not lead to a cynical dismissal of reality, but to a deeper, more nuanced understanding of its nature. It fosters humility, recognizing that our own reality is just one version among many, and it opens up a quiet sense of hope, the knowledge that because reality is built, it can always be rebuilt with more wisdom, compassion, and justice, resting peacefully, floating calmly in the vast, powerful, and ultimately human-made ocean of social reality. Ingroups and outgroups, the minimal group paradigm. Having understood that our reality is a shared social construction, we now delve into the most fundamental and powerful mechanism our minds use to navigate this social world: the act of categorization, the primal division of humanity into us versus them. We instinctively and automatically classify people, including ourselves, into groups. The group we belong to is our in-group. Every other group is an out-group. This tendency seems innate, a core part of our psychological operating system. But how deep does this tribal impulse run? What are the absolute minimum conditions required for us to form a sense of us and start favoring our own group over another? The answer, revealed by a series of ingenious and unsettling experiments, is found in the minimal group paradigm. This research paradigm demonstrates that our brains can be triggered to form loyalties and biases based on criteria that are completely arbitrary, temporary, and meaningless. The mystery here is the astonishing speed and automaticity of our tribal minds, a deep secret of our social psychology that reveals how little it takes to create the foundations of prejudice and conflict. This mindfuck questions the very basis of our loyalties, suggesting that our deepest sense of us can be built on the flimsiest of foundations, inviting deep relaxation through the calm, detached observation of this primal, automatic process as you fall asleep. The minimal group paradigm was developed in the 1970s by the social psychologist Henri Tajfel and his colleagues, who were seeking to understand the psychological roots of prejudice and intergroup conflict. They wanted to strip away all the usual reasons for group conflict: history, competition for resources, ideological differences, physical characteristics, to see if bias could be created from nothing. The experiments were elegant in their simplicity. In a typical study, a group of participants, often schoolboys who were strangers to one another, would be brought into a laboratory. They would be shown a series of slides with clusters of dots and asked to estimate the number of dots. Afterwards, the experimenters would pretend to score their estimates, but would then randomly assign the boys to one of two groups. They would be told something like, "Based on your estimates, you are an overestimator," or "You are an underestimator." In other experiments, the criteria were even more explicitly arbitrary. Participants would be assigned to a group based on a coin toss, or even based on their supposed preference for the paintings of one abstract artist, Klee, over another, Kandinsky, even if they had no prior knowledge of the artists. The key was that the groups were minimal, They were based on a meaningless and trivial criterion. The participants had no history together, they had no direct interaction with each other, and their individual membership was anonymous. Then came the crucial part of the experiment. Each participant was taken to a private cubicle and given a task: to distribute a small amount of real money or points to other anonymous participants, who were identified only by their group membership, e.g., member number 12 of the Klee group, member number 7 of the Kandinsky group. They could not allocate money to themselves. They were presented with a series of choices, such as, give $8 to a member of your group and $2 to a member of the other group, versus, give $5 to a member of your group and $5 to a member of the other group. The results were consistent and profound. A significant majority of participants showed a clear and consistent bias in favor of their own in-group. They would consistently allocate more money to anonymous members of their own, meaningless group than to members of the outgroup. Even more strikingly, they would often choose an option that maximized the difference in payout between the two groups, even if it meant their own group received a smaller absolute amount. For example, they might prefer to give their in-group member $2 and the outgroup member $1, rather than giving both groups $3. It was more important to beat the other group than to maximize their own group's absolute gains. This demonstrated that the mere act of being categorized, of being told, "You are in this group," was enough to trigger in-group favoritism and out-group discrimination. This is a stunning and deeply unsettling mindfuck. It reveals that our deep-seated tribal psychology does not require any substantive basis. We don't need a shared history, a common belief, or a conflict over resources to start favoring us and discriminating against them. The process is automatic, immediate, and triggered by the most minimal of social cues. The brain is a group-making machine, and once a we is established, a they is automatically created, and a bias towards we kicks in. This provides a powerful bottom-up explanation for the ubiquity of tribalism, prejudice, and intergroup conflict throughout human history. The major conflicts of the world may be fought over complex issues like religion, land, and ideology, but the underlying psychological engine that makes them possible is this simple, automatic, and often irrational in-group/out-group mechanism. The psychology mystery here is why our minds are built this way. This is where we turn to an evolutionary perspective, which we will explore in our next segment. For our ancestors, this rapid and automatic formation of group loyalty was likely a critical survival advantage. It fostered cohesion, cooperation, and a willingness to sacrifice for one's own kin and tribe in a world of intense intergroup competition. The brain that was quick to identify and favor us was more likely to be part of a successful, surviving group. The problem is that this ancient, adaptive software is still running in our modern, complex, globalized world, often with disastrous consequences. Our brains are still primed to see the world in terms of competing tribes, even when those tribal lines are based on modern, socially constructed identities like political party, nationality, or even sports team affiliation. Understanding the minimal group paradigm is a crucial step towards self-awareness and mitigating our own biases. It teaches us to be skeptical of our own immediate, intuitive loyalties and animosities. When we feel a strong sense of us against them, we can learn to pause and ask, what is the basis for this group distinction? Is it meaningful, or is it as arbitrary as a preference for Klee over Kandinsky? Recognizing the automatic nature of in-group favoritism can allow us to consciously override it, to make more deliberate and equitable decisions based on individual merit rather than group affiliation. It is a call to move from the automatic, subconscious judgment of the group to the conscious, deliberate judgment of the individual. As you continue to fall asleep, gently bring your awareness to the various groups you belong to, your family, your community, your nation, the supporters of your favorite team. Feel the subtle, often pleasant, sense of belonging that comes with being part of an in-group. Now, with non-judgmental awareness, acknowledge the equally automatic creation of outgroups, a them that is defined in opposition to your us. See this not as a moral failing, but as the ancient, automatic working of your own mind, as revealed by the minimal group paradigm. Find deep relaxation in this understanding. By seeing the mechanism, we can begin to free ourselves from its unthinking grip, resting peacefully, aware of the pull of the tribe, yet quietly resolved to see the individual beyond the label. Tribalism, an evolutionary perspective. We have just witnessed the astonishing speed and ease with which our minds can form an in-group and an out-group, based on the most trivial of distinctions. This automatic, often irrational, groupishness points to a deep and ancient force within the human psyche. We now turn to explore the powerful origins of this force through an evolutionary perspective on tribalism. For the vast majority of human history, we lived not as isolated individuals, but as members of small, tightly knit, cooperative tribes. In a world fraught with danger, from predators to harsh climates to competing human groups, survival was a collective enterprise. This long ancestral environment forged our minds, selecting for a specific set of psychological traits, a tribal software that is still running in our brains today. Understanding this deep evolutionary heritage is a profound psychology mystery, a key secret to unlocking why we are so prone to conformity, loyalty, prejudice, and the powerful, often dangerous, dynamic of us versus them. This is not a story of our flaws, but of our ancestors' success. Contemplating these ancient roots can bring a strange kind of peace, a compassionate understanding of our own sometimes troubling social instincts as you fall asleep. Let's journey back in time into the world of our hunter-gatherer ancestors. In this environment, the group was everything. Your tribe was your source of safety, food, and knowledge. It provided protection from predators and rival groups. It enabled cooperative hunting of large game. It was the repository of essential cultural knowledge. Which plants were edible, how to make tools, which traditions to follow. Crucially, it was the only context for raising vulnerable human children to adulthood. To be a member of a strong, cohesive, and cooperative tribe was the single greatest predictor of your survival and the survival of your genes. Conversely, to be ostracized or cast out from your tribe was, in all likelihood, a death sentence. Given these intense selective pressures, evolution would have favored individuals who possessed a specific suite of psychological adaptations for group living. First and foremost was the powerful, innate need to belong. The desire for social connection, the pleasure we feel from being accepted by a group, and the profound pain we feel from rejection and loneliness are not modern sentiments. They are ancient survival instincts. Our subconscious minds are exquisitely attuned to our social standing, constantly monitoring for signs of acceptance or disapproval. This deep need to belong is the engine that drives much of our social behavior, from our willingness to conform to group norms to our desire to build strong social bonds. Second, evolution would have favored a strong capacity for in-group cooperation and altruism. Groups that were better at cooperating, at sharing resources, at helping each other in times of need, and at presenting a united front against external threats would have outcompete groups of selfish individualists. This led to the evolution of a set of pro-social emotions like empathy, compassion, loyalty, and a sense of fairness. However, this altruism was often parochial, meaning it was primarily directed towards members of one's own in-group. The same evolutionary pressures that favored cooperation within the tribe often favored suspicion, hostility, and aggression between tribes, who were often in direct competition for scarce resources like territory, water, or mates. This is the deep, paradoxical root of the us versus them dynamic. The same psychological mechanism that creates love and loyalty for us simultaneously creates the potential for fear and animosity towards them. The ability to rapidly distinguish friend from foe, in-group member from out-group member, was a critical survival skill. Our brains became wired to be highly sensitive to markers of group identity, kinship, accent, dialect, appearance, cultural practices. This ancient, tribal detector is the likely foundation for the minimal group paradigm we just explored. It's so sensitive that it can be triggered even by arbitrary, meaningless distinctions. The mindfuck of this evolutionary perspective is the realization that some of our most cherished virtues and our most destructive vices may spring from the very same psychological root. Loyalty, self-sacrifice, and community spirit, the very best of human nature, may be the light side of the same tribal instinct whose dark side is xenophobia, prejudice, and intergroup conflict. The human heart is not a simple battleground between pure good and pure evil, but a complex landscape where our adaptive social instincts can be channeled towards either profoundly constructive or profoundly destructive ends, depending on the context and the definition of US. This evolutionary legacy helps to explain many of the psychology mysteries of our modern social world. Why are we so easily swayed by political rhetoric that emphasizes national pride and demonizes other countries? It taps into our ancient in-group loyalty. Why are sports rivalries so passionate, feeling almost like a matter of life and death? They are a modern, ritualized form of tribal competition. Why do social media platforms so easily devolve into polarized, warring factions? They provide a perfect environment for our tribal minds to form echo chambers and castigate the outgroup. Our Stone Age brains are now navigating an information age world, and the mismatch can be dangerous. The cues that once signaled real, physical threats from rival tribes are now being triggered by differences in opinion, political affiliation, or online identity. It's important to understand that this evolutionary perspective is not a form of genetic determinism. It does not mean we are doomed to be forever trapped in cycles of tribal conflict. It simply describes the innate predispositions, the default settings, of the human mind. Our conscious, modern brain, with its capacity for reason, reflection, and empathy, has the ability to recognize and override these ancient impulses. We have the capacity to expand our circle of compassion, to redefine who belongs to us. The entire project of civilization and the development of universal human rights can be seen as a long, ongoing struggle to transcend the limitations of our innate tribalism. As you continue to relax deeply, gently acknowledge the ancient tribal heritage that lies within your own subconscious mind. Feel the deep, comforting pull of belonging, the innate need for your us. And also, with non-judgmental awareness, notice the equally automatic and sometimes uncomfortable creation of a them. See these impulses not as your personal choices, but as the echoes of your ancestors' long struggle for survival, a powerful ancient software that helped them endure. Find peace in this deep understanding of your own nature. Let go of any guilt for these primal feelings and instead, cultivate a sense of compassionate awareness, knowing that your conscious mind has the power to choose a wider, more inclusive definition of your tribe. Resting calmly, a modern human with an ancient mind, at peace with the profound legacy of your evolutionary past as you fall asleep. Stereotypes, prejudice, and discrimination. Having established the deep, evolutionary roots of our tribal psychology, the automatic division of our world into us versus them, we must now confront the dark and painful consequences that can arise from this fundamental aspect of our nature. We will now explore the troubling trio of stereotypes, prejudice, and discrimination. These are not interchangeable terms. They represent three distinct, though deeply interconnected, stages of intergroup bias, moving from the realm of thought to the realm of feeling and finally to the realm of action. A stereotype is a cognitive shortcut, a generalized belief about a group. Prejudice is the emotional baggage, the negative feeling or attitude towards a group. And discrimination is the behavioral outcome, the negative action taken against a group. Understanding how these three are born from our basic Ingroups/outgroup psychology is a crucial and sobering secret of our social reality, a psychology mystery that reveals how cognitive efficiency can lead to social injustice. This is a difficult topic, but contemplating it with calm, detached awareness is a vital step towards a more compassionate and conscious existence, a pathway to deep relaxation through understanding, not avoidance, as you fall asleep. Let's begin with stereotypes. The word itself originally referred to a printing plate that produced identical copies, and this is a good metaphor for its psychological function. A stereotype is a generalized belief or a cognitive schema about the personal attributes of a group of people. It is a mental shortcut, a heuristic, that our brain uses to simplify a complex social world. Faced with the impossible task of knowing every individual as a unique being, our categorizing brain tends to apply a set of assumed characteristics to all members of a particular group. Stereotypes are not necessarily negative. They can be positive, all Asians are good at math, or neutral, all librarians are quiet. However, they are almost always oversimplifications, and they become harmful when they are negative, when they are held rigidly in the face of contradictory evidence, and when they are used to justify prejudice and discrimination. The formation of stereotypes stems from several cognitive processes. They can be learned from our culture, absorbed from media portrayals, parental teachings, and peer groups. They are also fueled by a cognitive bias known as the illusory correlation, where we perceive a relationship between two things, e.g., a minority group and a negative behavior, that doesn't actually exist or is much weaker than we believe. This often happens because our attention is drawn to distinctive events. When a member of a minority group, distinctive, performs a negative act, distinctive, the co-occurrence is highly memorable and can lead to a faulty generalization about the entire group. Stereotypes, once formed, are notoriously resistant to change due to confirmation bias. We actively look for and remember information that confirms our stereotype, while ignoring or explaining away information that contradicts it. While stereotypes are cognitive, about beliefs, prejudice is affective, about feelings. Prejudice is a preconceived negative judgment or attitude towards a group and its individual members. It is the emotional charge that gets attached to the stereotype. You can have a stereotype about a group without necessarily feeling prejudice, but prejudice is almost always fueled by negative stereotypes. This feeling of dislike, fear, contempt, or distrust towards an outgroup is the emotional engine of us versus them psychology. It is often rooted in perceived threats, a threat to one's resources, one's values, one's safety, or one's social status. It can also be a product of projection, where we project our own disowned shadow qualities onto another group. Prejudice is the feeling of them being not just different, but somehow inferior, threatening, or less worthy than us. This emotional component is what makes intergroup bias so powerful and so resistant to purely logical arguments. This leads to the final, behavioral component: discrimination. Discrimination is the unjustified negative behavior or action towards a group or its members. It is prejudice put into practice. It can range from subtle microaggressions, like ignoring someone's contribution in a meeting, and social avoidance, to more overt forms like hate speech, exclusionary policies in housing or employment, and in its most extreme forms, systemic oppression and violence. Discrimination is where the inner world of biased thoughts and feelings crosses the line into the outer world, creating real, tangible harm and reinforcing social inequalities. A person can hold stereotypes or even feel prejudice without acting on them, but it is the act of discrimination that transforms an internal bias into a social injustice. The mindfuck of this trio is the realization of how seamlessly our minds can move from a seemingly harmless cognitive shortcut, a stereotype, to a powerful negative emotion, prejudice, and then to a harmful action, discrimination. It reveals a slippery slope within our own psychology. The process is often not a conscious, deliberate decision to be hateful. It can be an unconscious cascade, where a culturally absorbed stereotype, triggered by a social context, evokes an automatic negative feeling, which then subtly influences our behavior in ways we might not even be aware of. This is the mystery of implicit bias at work, which we have explored. It means that good, well-intentioned people who consciously renounce prejudice can still be complicit in discriminatory behavior due to the unexamined workings of their subconscious mind. Understanding this progression is crucial for combating bias, both in ourselves and in society. It's not enough to simply say, "I'm not prejudiced." We must also actively examine and challenge the underlying stereotypes we may have unconsciously absorbed. We must cultivate empathy to counteract the emotional charge of prejudice. And we must be vigilant about how our behaviors might be affecting others, regardless of our conscious intentions, to prevent discrimination. This is not easy or comfortable work. It requires a willingness to look at the dark side of our own social psychology, to acknowledge the ease with which our minds create and police the boundary between us and them. But this self-awareness is the necessary first step towards building a more just and compassionate world. As you continue to fall asleep, allow yourself to hold these difficult concepts with a gentle, non-judgmental awareness. Acknowledge the mind's natural tendency to create stereotypes as a way of simplifying the world. Recognize how these cognitive shortcuts can become laden with the negative emotion of prejudice, and how that feeling can lead to the harmful action of discrimination. See this not as a story of bad people, but as a story of the universal human tendency towards groupishness and bias. Find deep relaxation not in denying this part of our nature, but in the compassionate understanding of it. Let this awareness foster a quiet resolve to look beyond the stereotype, to question the prejudice, and to choose actions based on individual character rather than group identity, resting peacefully with a deeper and more honest understanding of the complex social landscape, both outside of us and within. The Robber's Cave Experiment, Intergroup Conflict. We have explored the deep, often unconscious foundations of our tribal psychology, the evolutionary pressures, the minimal conditions for creating an us and a them, and the resulting biases of stereotyping and prejudice. Let us now journey into one of the most famous, ethically complex, and revealing field studies in the history of social psychology, an experiment that took these abstract principles and demonstrated their power in a real-world setting. This is the Robber's Cave Experiment, conducted by Muzafer Sharif and his colleagues in the 1950s. This study is not just an experiment. It is a living narrative, a powerful story about how easily intergroup conflict can be ignited between two groups of ordinary, well-adjusted boys, and more hopefully, how that conflict can be resolved. The Robber's Cave Experiment is a profound psychology mystery in action. a real-life demonstration of how the fires of tribalism are stoked and how they can be extinguished. It questions the very nature of hostility, suggesting that it is not necessarily an innate quality of individuals, but an emergent property of the situation between groups. Let this classic story of conflict and reconciliation guide you into a state of deep relaxation and social understanding as you fall asleep. The experiment was set in a remote summer camp at Robbers Cave State Park in Oklahoma, deliberately isolating the participants from outside influences. The subjects were 22 11-year-old boys, all of whom were carefully screened to be psychologically healthy, intelligent, and from stable, white, middle-class Protestant families. They were deliberately chosen to be as homogeneous as possible, to ensure that no pre-existing differences in background, race, or religion could be blamed for any conflict that might arise. The boys did not know they were part of a psychological experiment. They believed they were simply attending a normal summer camp. The experiment unfolded in 3 distinct phases. In Phase 1, in-group formation, the boys were divided into 2 separate groups, the Eagles and the Rattlers, without being aware of the other group's existence. They were housed in separate cabins, transported in separate buses, and for the first week, they engaged in activities designed to build group cohesion and a strong sense of in-group identity. They hiked together, swam together, cooked meals together. They created group names, designed flags, and established their own unique norms and social hierarchies. As expected, a strong sense of "we" developed within each group. They became the Eagles and the Rattlers, each with a burgeoning sense of pride and identity. In Phase 2, intergroup friction, the experimenters deliberately brought the 2 groups into contact, but in a way that created competition and frustration. A 4-day tournament of competitive games was announced: baseball, tug-of-war, a treasure hunt, with a grand prize of a trophy and individual pocket knives for the winning group. The competition was designed to be a zero-sum game. One group's victory was the other group's loss. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The friendly camaraderie of the first week vanished, replaced by rapidly escalating hostility. Verbal insults and name-calling began almost immediately. The groups refused to eat in the same room. They burned each other's flags. They raided each other's cabins. What had been 2 groups of well-adjusted boys had quickly devolved into 2 warring tribes. The researchers also observed a strong increase in in-group solidarity and a more negative perception of the outgroup. Each group described their own members as brave and tough, while describing the other group's members as sneaky, cheaters, and rotten. This demonstrated the core principle of realistic conflict theory, that competition for scarce resources, in this case, the prize and the associated status, is a powerful driver of intergroup conflict, prejudice, and discrimination. The mindfuck of this second phase is the sheer speed and intensity with which the hostility emerged. These were not bad kids. They were normal, healthy children. Yet, the simple introduction of a competitive, zero-sum situation was enough to transform them into prejudiced, hostile rivals. It powerfully demonstrates that conflict is not necessarily a product of deviant personalities, but can be a predictable outcome of the situation between groups. It questions our tendency to blame conflict solely on the evil nature of the other side, suggesting instead that the structure of the interaction itself may be the primary cause. But the experiment did not end there. The most important part was Phase 3, conflict resolution. The researchers first tried to reduce the conflict through simple, non-competitive contact, a test of the early contact hypothesis. They brought the groups together for pleasant activities like watching movies or shooting off fireworks. This completely failed. The contact was used as an opportunity for more insults and food fights. Mere contact, without a shared purpose, was not enough to overcome the entrenched hostility. Then, the researchers implemented the crucial intervention. They engineered a series of superordinate goals, urgent, compelling problems that could not be solved by either group alone and required the cooperation of both. In one scenario, the camp's water supply mysteriously failed, and all 22 boys had to work together to find and fix the problem. In another, the camp truck, which was needed to get food, broke down, and it took the combined effort of both groups pulling on a rope to get it started. Slowly but surely, this forced cooperation began to change everything. As the boys worked together to achieve these shared goals, the rigid boundary between us and them began to dissolve. They began to see each other not as rotten rattlers or cheating eagles, but as fellow campers, as individuals. Stereotypes faded, friendships began to form across group lines, and the hostility was gradually replaced by cooperation and even camaraderie. On the last day of camp, the boys unanimously chose to ride home together on the same bus, and the group that had won the prize money from a bean collecting contest decided to spend it on treats for everyone. The Robbers Cave experiment is a profound, if ethically dubious by modern standards, psychology mystery brought to life. It serves as a powerful real-world parable about the human condition. It demonstrates the dark side of our tribal nature, the ease with which we form groups, develop prejudice, and descend into conflict over competition. But it also illuminates a path towards peace and reconciliation. It shows that the powerful us versus them dynamic is not immutable. By creating superordinate goals, by fostering a sense of shared identity and a common fate, the walls between tribes can come down. As you continue to fall asleep, let the story of the eagles and the rattlers play out in your mind. See the two groups, initially separate but peaceful. Feel the tension and hostility rise as they are pitted against each other in competition. See the flags burn, hear the insults. Now, see them faced with a common problem, the broken-down truck. And watch as they begin to pull together, their group identities slowly merging into a new, larger us. Acknowledge the powerful lesson of this story, that conflict is often born from the situation, not the soul, and that cooperation towards a shared goal is the most powerful antidote to division. Find deep relaxation in this hopeful conclusion, in the understanding that even our deepest tribal instincts can be overcome, that the boundaries between us and them are not fixed, but fluid, resting peacefully with a quiet faith in the power of shared purpose to heal a divided world. Contact hypothesis, reducing prejudice. Having witnessed the sobering reality of how easily intergroup conflict can be created in the Robbers Cave experiment, we now turn our attention to a more hopeful and constructive secret of social reality, the search for ways to heal these divisions. For decades, one of the most influential and well-researched theories in social psychology for reducing prejudice between groups has been the contact hypothesis. First proposed by psychologist Gordon Allport in the 1950s, the hypothesis, in its simplest form, suggests that under the right conditions, direct, personal contact between members of different, often hostile, groups can lead to a reduction in prejudice, stereotyping, and discrimination. It is a theory grounded in the simple yet powerful idea that familiarity, understanding, and human connection can break down the artificial walls our minds erect between us versus them. However, the story is not so simple. Early hopes that just bringing people together would be enough were quickly shown to be naive. Contact can sometimes even worsen tensions. The true psychology mystery of the contact hypothesis lies in identifying the specific conditions that make contact effective. Exploring these conditions is not just an academic exercise. It provides a practical roadmap for fostering tolerance and reconciliation in our diverse and often divided world, inviting deep relaxation through contemplating the science of building bridges between people as you fall asleep. Gordon Allport, in his seminal work The Nature of Prejudice, recognized that mere contact is not a magic bullet. As the Robbers Cave experiment showed, simply bringing the eagles and the rattlers together for movies resulted in food fights, not friendships. For contact to be successful in reducing prejudice, Allport proposed that 4 key conditions must be met. These conditions have been refined and tested over thousands of studies and remain the bedrock of the theory. The first and perhaps most crucial condition is equal status. The members of the different groups must interact with each other on an equal footing. If the contact situation reinforces a pre-existing power imbalance or status difference, e.g., members of a majority group interacting only with members of a minority group in subordinate roles, it is unlikely to reduce prejudice. In fact, it can even strengthen stereotypes by confirming the existing social hierarchy. For genuine, positive change to occur, the contact must be between equals, where both parties have the opportunity to engage with each other as peers, as complex individuals rather than as representatives of a status category. The second condition is the pursuit of common goals. As we saw so powerfully in the Robbers Cave experiment, contact is most effective when members of the different groups are working together cooperatively to achieve a shared or superordinate goal. When people are united by a common objective that requires their mutual effort, the us versus them boundary starts to become irrelevant. The most important group identity becomes the new, combined we, who are working together to solve the problem. This cooperative context reframes the relationship from one of competition to one of interdependence, fostering mutual respect and understanding. The third condition is intergroup cooperation. It is not enough to just have common goals. The groups must actively work together in a cooperative, non-competitive manner to achieve them. The interaction should be built on mutual reliance. This allows members of each group to see individuals from the other group as competent, helpful, and essential partners. It breaks down stereotypes by providing direct, personal evidence that contradicts the negative, oversimplified beliefs one might hold about the outgroup. Seeing a member of them as a skilled and dedicated teammate makes it harder to maintain a prejudiced attitude. The fourth and final of Allport's original conditions is institutional support. For contact to be truly effective, it must be supported by the broader social norms, authorities, and institutions. If laws, policies, or the explicit messages from leaders and authority figures sanction and support the positive intergroup contact, it is far more likely to be successful and have a lasting impact. Institutional support lends legitimacy to the interaction and signals that the new, more inclusive relationships are the expected norm. Conversely, if the institutional context remains segregated or discriminatory, individual positive contact experiences may struggle to overcome the larger societal pressures. The mindfuck of the contact hypothesis is its profound yet simple prescription for one of humanity's most intractable problems. It suggests that prejudice, a deep-seated psychological and social ill, is not an immutable feature of human nature, but a malleable attitude that can be changed through carefully structured social interaction. It questions the fatalistic belief that ancient hatreds and tribal divisions are destined to last forever. It offers a practical, evidence-based pathway towards a more tolerant and integrated society. The mystery is not if contact can work, but how to successfully create these optimal conditions on a large scale in a world that is often characterized by inequality, competition, and institutional segregation. Modern research has expanded on Allport's original framework, adding other important facilitating factors. It has been found that contact is more effective when it allows for the formation of genuine friendships across group lines. Moving from a formal, task-oriented interaction to a more personal, self-disclosing friendship is a powerful mechanism for breaking down barriers and fostering empathy. The emotional connection of friendship can be a powerful antidote to the cold calculus of stereotyping. Another important insight is the role of extended contact. Even if an individual does not have direct personal contact with members of an outgroup, simply knowing that members of their own group have positive friendships with outgroup members can significantly reduce their own prejudice. This, contact through a friend, can reduce intergroup anxiety and change perceived norms about the outgroup, showing that the positive effects of contact can ripple outwards through social networks. Contemplating the contact hypothesis provides a structured sense of hope. It moves the problem of prejudice from the realm of intractable evil to the realm of solvable social psychology. It provides a blueprint for interventions in schools, workplaces, communities, and nations. Desegregation, cooperative learning programs, and projects that unite different communities in pursuit of a common goal are all real-world applications of this powerful theory. As you continue to fall asleep, let your mind gently hold the principles of positive contact. Equal status, common goals, cooperation, and institutional support. Picture two groups, once divided by suspicion and stereotypes, slowly beginning to work together on a shared project. See the initial awkwardness give way to mutual reliance, understanding, and eventually, the spark of individual connection and friendship. Acknowledge the profound secret of social reality that the walls we build between us and them are not made of stone, but of psychology, and they can be dismantled, brick by brick, through meaningful human connection. Find deep relaxation in this hopeful, evidence-based vision, in the knowledge that prejudice is not an incurable disease, but a condition that can be treated with the powerful medicine of cooperative, equal-status contact, resting peacefully, with a quiet and hopeful vision of a more integrated and understanding world. The Psychology of Conformity, ASH experiments. Having seen how intergroup dynamics can foster conflict and how contact can build bridges, let us now turn our focus inward, to the immense and often invisible pressures that operate within our own tribes. We explore the powerful human tendency known as conformity. This is the act of adjusting one's behavior, attitudes, or beliefs to align with the perceived norms of a group. Why do we so often feel a powerful urge to go along with the crowd, even when the crowd seems to be wrong? What is the nature of this social gravity that pulls our individual judgments into alignment with the collective? The psychology of conformity was most famously and starkly demonstrated in a series of classic experiments by social psychologist Solomon Asch, which revealed the astonishing power of group pressure to make us doubt the evidence of our own eyes. This psychology mystery is a profound mindfuck that questions our sense of individuality and rational autonomy, revealing a deep secret of social reality, that the desire to belong is often a more powerful motivator than the desire to be right. Contemplating this deep pull of the group can lead to a state of profound self-awareness and deep relaxation as you fall asleep. The setup of Solomon Asch's experiments in the 1950s was deceptively simple. A volunteer participant would enter a room with a group of other people, believing they were all taking part in a simple visual perception test. The group was shown a card with a single vertical line on it, the standard line. They were then shown another card with 3 comparison lines of varying lengths, labeled A, B, and C. Their task was straightforward: to state out loud which of the 3 comparison lines was the same length as the standard line. The answer was always obvious and unambiguous. However, unbeknownst to the real participant, all the other people in the room were Confederates, actors working for the experimenter. For the first few trials, the Confederates would all give the correct answer, establishing a baseline of normality. But then, on a designated critical trial, the Confederates, one by one, would unanimously and confidently give the same clearly incorrect answer. The real participant, who was typically seated to answer last or next to last, was now faced with a profound dilemma. Do they trust the undeniable evidence of their own senses and give the correct answer, thereby making themselves the lone dissenter in a unanimous group? Or do they discard the evidence of their own eyes and go along with the group's obviously wrong judgment? The results were stunning and have been replicated for decades. Asch found that a significant number of people chose to conform. About 1/3 of the participants conformed to the clearly incorrect majority on the critical trials. And across the entire experiment, a full 75% of participants conformed at least once. In a control group where participants performed the task alone, they made errors less than 1% of the time. This vast difference revealed the powerful, distorting effect of group pressure on individual judgment. The mindfuck of the Asch experiments lies in their demonstration of how easily our perception of reality can be swayed by social pressure. These participants were not weak-willed or unintelligent. They were ordinary people who, when faced with a conflict between physical reality and social reality, often chose to align with the social. When interviewed afterwards, the participants gave different reasons for their conformity. Some experienced what is known as normative social influence. They admitted they knew the group was wrong, but they conformed anyway to avoid the discomfort of standing out, of being ridiculed, or of being seen as the fool. They felt a powerful need to be liked and accepted by the in-group, and this need was strong enough to make them publicly state something they privately knew to be false. Their behavior changed, but their private belief did not. Others, however, experienced a more profound form of influence, known as informational social influence. They began to genuinely doubt their own perception. Faced with a unanimous group of peers confidently stating the opposite of what they saw, they started to think, how could we all be seeing it differently? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe my eyesight is failing. Maybe I misunderstood the instructions. The group's consensus was taken as a source of information about reality, a signal that was powerful enough to make them question the direct evidence of their own senses. For these participants, not only did their behavior change, but their private belief about reality began to shift as well. This reveals the truly insidious power of conformity. It can not only make us lie about what we see, but it can actually change what we believe we see. This psychology mystery forces us to question our cherished ideal of the rational, independent individual. The experiments suggest that our connection to social reality is, for many of us, more fundamental than our connection to physical reality. The fear of social isolation can be a more powerful motivator than the commitment to objective truth. This is a sobering insight into the nature of our tribal minds. We are wired to be part of an US, and that wiring can lead us to abandon our own best judgment to maintain our place within the group. The principles of conformity are at play all around us, in every aspect of our social lives. They drive fashion trends, the adoption of popular opinions, the dynamics of office meetings, where people may be hesitant to challenge the boss's bad idea, and even the formation of investment bubbles. The power of social proof, the assumption that if many people are doing something, it must be the right thing to do, is a potent force that shapes our choices, often unconsciously. Understanding the mechanisms of conformity is the first step to resisting its undue influence. Ash's follow-up studies revealed the crucial factors that can break its spell. The most powerful of these, as we will explore in a later segment, is the presence of a dissenting voice. When just one of the Confederates in the experiment was instructed to give the correct answer, breaking the unanimity of the majority, the conformity rate of the real participant plummeted dramatically. A single ally is often enough to give someone the courage to trust their own perception. This highlights the immense power of individual dissent in liberating others from the pressure to conform. As you continue to fall asleep, let the image of Ash's experiment gently unfold in your mind. Picture yourself in that room, seeing the lines clearly, and then hearing one by one everyone else give a different, obviously wrong answer. Feel the rising tide of doubt, the discomfort of standing alone, the powerful pull to just go along with the group. Acknowledge this force of conformity within your own being, not as a weakness, but as a deep, ancient, and powerful part of our social nature. Find deep relaxation in this self-awareness. By understanding the invisible pressures of the group, we can become more conscious of our choices. We can learn to distinguish between wise consensus and mindless conformity, resting peacefully with a quiet commitment to trusting your own perception, while holding a compassionate understanding for the profound human need to belong. The Psychology of Obedience, Milgram experiments. Having witnessed the power of our peers to sway our judgment, let us now descend into an even more disturbing and profound territory of social influence. We will explore the psychology of obedience, the human tendency to follow the commands of an authority figure, even when those commands conflict with our deepest moral convictions. This dark aspect of our social nature was most famously and chillingly demonstrated in a series of experiments that have become legendary for their ethical controversy and their shocking results. These are the Milgram experiments, conducted by psychologist Stanley Milgram in the 1960s. Milgram sought to understand the mystery of how ordinary people could be brought to participate in horrific acts, such as those committed during the Holocaust. His findings revealed that the evil was not necessarily in the people, but in the power of the situation and the immense pressure to obey authority. This is a deeply unsettling mindfuck that questions our own moral fortitude and our belief that we would do the right thing under pressure. It is a crucial, if difficult, secret of social reality to contemplate, inviting a sober form of deep relaxation that comes from a clear-eyed, compassionate understanding of human fallibility as you fall asleep. The setup of Milgram's experiment was a masterpiece of psychological stagecraft. A volunteer participant would arrive at a Yale University laboratory, believing they were taking part in a study on memory and learning. They were introduced to another participant, who was actually an actor, and the experimenter, a stern, authoritative figure in a gray lab coat. Through a rigged draw, the real participant was always assigned the role of the teacher, and the actor was assigned the role of the learner. The teacher's task was to read a list of word pairs to the learner, who was strapped into a chair in an adjacent room, and then test the learner's memory. For every wrong answer the learner gave, the teacher was instructed by the experimenter to deliver an electric shock, starting at a mild 15 volts and increasing by 15 volts for each subsequent error, all the way up to a terrifying 450 volts, which was labeled XXX danger, severe shock. The shocks, of course, were fake. The learner was an actor who followed a script, grunting at lower voltages, crying out in pain, shouting about a heart condition, and eventually at the highest voltages, falling into an eerie, unresponsive silence. The real experiment was a test of the teacher. How far would they go? How much apparent suffering would an ordinary person inflict on another, simply because an authority figure in a lab coat told them, "The experiment requires that you continue"? The results were horrifying and they shocked the world. In the most well-known variation of the experiment, a full 65%, nearly 2/3, of the participants went all the way to the 450-volt shock. They did not do so with pleasure. The film recordings of the experiments show participants in extreme distress, sweating, trembling, stuttering, laughing nervously, and repeatedly begging the experimenter to stop. They would protest, saying, "I don't think I can go on," but when the authority figure calmly responded with a series of prescripted prods like, "Please continue," or, "You have no other choice, you must go on," the majority of them, despite their profound moral conflict, would turn back to the shock generator and continue. The mindfuck of the Milgram experiments is its stark revelation of the banality of evil, the idea that monstrous acts are not necessarily committed by monstrous people, but by ordinary people who have ceded their moral responsibility to an authority. These were not sadists. They were regular people, teachers, engineers, postal workers, who in their everyday lives were likely kind and decent. The experiment created a powerful situation that effectively short-circuited their personal conscience. Milgram's analysis identified several key situational factors that drove this high level of obedience. The perceived legitimacy of the authority was crucial. The experiment was conducted at the prestigious Yale University, and the experimenter was a calm, professional figure, lending the situation a powerful aura of scientific legitimacy. The authority figure also explicitly accepted responsibility, telling the participant that they would be responsible for whatever happened, allowing the teacher to enter what Milgram called an agentic state, seeing themselves as a mere agent or instrument of the authority's will, rather than as an autonomous moral actor. This diffusion of responsibility was a key mechanism for assuaging guilt. The gradual escalation of the shocks was another critical factor. The slippery slope of starting with a mild 15-volt shock and increasing by small increments made it difficult for participants to find a clear line to draw. Each step was only slightly worse than the one before it, making it hard to justify stopping at 180 volts when they had already administered 165. This incremental nature is a common feature in real-world atrocities, where people are slowly drawn into worsening behavior one small step at a time. This psychology mystery forces us to question our own moral self-concept. It is easy to believe, from the comfort of our own quiet rooms, that we would be among the one-third who disobeyed. But Milgram's results suggest that, for the majority of us, this is a comforting illusion. The power of the situation, the pressure to obey a legitimate authority, the desire not to make a scene or challenge the established order, can be a force strong enough to make us act in direct opposition to our own deepest values. It reveals a profound vulnerability in the human psyche, a dark potential for complicity that is not about evil character, but about the power of social context. Like the Ash experiments, Milgram also studied the conditions that could reduce obedience. When the authority figure was less imposing, not in a lab coat, or gave orders by phone, obedience dropped. When the teacher was forced to be physically closer to the learner, in the same room, or even forcing their hand onto a shock plate, obedience dropped dramatically as the victim's suffering became more salient and harder to psychologically distance. And most hopefully, just as with conformity, the presence of dissenting peers was a powerful antidote. When the real participant was in a group with two other teachers, actors, who refused to continue, over 90% of the real participants also chose to disobey. This demonstrates the immense power of social support in providing the courage to resist unjust authority. As you continue to fall asleep, allow the sobering story of the Milgram experiments to unfold in your awareness. Feel the profound conflict of the teacher, caught between the cries of a suffering victim and the calm commands of an authority figure. Acknowledge, with humility and compassion, the powerful situational forces that can lead ordinary people to do extraordinary harm. See this not as a story about the evil of others, but as a cautionary tale about the universal human susceptibility to the pressure of obedience. Find deep relaxation not in the comfort of self-assurance, but in the profound self-awareness this mystery provides. In understanding our vulnerabilities, we find the first step towards true moral strength, resting peacefully with a quiet commitment to conscience, and a deep appreciation for the courage it takes to disobey. Social identity theory, the power of we. We have witnessed the almost instantaneous formation of ingroups and outgroups and the powerful pressures of conformity and obedience. Let us now delve deeper into the psychological engine that drives these phenomena, exploring the profound connection between our sense of self and the groups to which we belong. This is the realm of social identity theory. Developed by Henri Tajfel and John Turner, this theory proposes that our self-concept is not just a singular I, but is composed of multiple identities, including a social identity derived from our membership in various social groups. Our sense of pride, our self-esteem, and our very understanding of who we are become deeply intertwined with the fate and status of our tribes. Social identity theory is a crucial secret of social reality, a psychology mystery that explains why the division between us versus them is so emotionally charged and why we are so motivated to favor our own group. It questions the very idea of a purely individualistic self, revealing that a significant part of our identity is a collective we. Understanding this deep psychological fusion is a pathway to deep relaxation through a more profound understanding of our social nature as you fall asleep. At the core of social identity theory lies a simple, three-step mental process that operates largely unconsciously. The first step is social categorization. As we've discussed, this is the automatic cognitive shortcut of categorizing people, including ourselves, into groups. We label ourselves and others as man or woman, liberal or conservative, a fan of a certain sports team, a citizen of a nation, a member of a profession. This is a natural process of simplifying a complex social world, of creating mental schemas to organize information about people. We don't just see individuals, we see representatives of categories. The second step is social identification. This is the process of adopting the identity of the group we have categorized ourselves into. We internalize the group's norms, values, and attitudes. The group's identity becomes a part of our own self-concept. When you identify as a supporter of a particular cause, for instance, you don't just agree with its principles. You begin to see yourself as a supporter, as part of that we. This process is deeply emotional. The group's triumphs feel like our personal triumphs. The group's defeats feel like our personal defeats. This is why we say, we won. When our favorite sports team is victorious, even though we were just watching from our sofa, we are experiencing a psychological merger with the group, and our self-esteem becomes linked to the group's perceived status and success. The third and most crucial step is social comparison. Once we have identified with an in-group, we have an innate motivation to maintain a positive social identity. To achieve this, we compare our own group to other relevant outgroups. And because we want to feel good about ourselves and our self is now tied to the group, we are motivated to find ways in which us is better than them. This is the engine of in-group favoritism. We tend to evaluate our own group more positively, to attribute its successes to its superior qualities, and to remember more positive information about it. Conversely, we are more likely to evaluate the outgroup negatively, to attribute its successes to luck, and to remember more negative information about it. This is not necessarily born from a deep-seated hatred of the outgroup. It is often born from a deep-seated need to enhance the positive distinctiveness of our own in-group as a way of boosting our own self-esteem. This three-step process, categorization, identification, and comparison, provides a powerful psychological explanation for the findings of the minimal group paradigm. The moment participants were categorized into overestimators or CLE fans, they identified with that trivial group, and then engaged in social comparison by allocating more resources to their own group to make it better than the other. The theory shows that prejudice and discrimination do not require any real conflict or historical animosity. They can be born simply from the normal, automatic process of seeking a positive social identity in a world of groups. The mindfuck of social identity theory is its revelation of how much of our emotional life and self-worth is outsourced to the collective. It questions the ideal of the rugged, independent individual, suggesting instead that we are deeply psychologically dependent on our group memberships for our sense of who we are and how valuable we are. It means that a threat to our group's status or beliefs can be perceived by our subconscious mind as a direct threat to our personal self, triggering powerful, defensive emotional reactions. This explains why political and religious debates can become so intensely personal and hostile. An attack on one's ideology or faith is not just an intellectual disagreement. It is an attack on a core part of one's identity. The psychology mystery lies in the fluidity and multiplicity of our social identities. We all belong to many different groups at once, defined by our family, our profession, our nationality, our hobbies, our gender, our age. Which of these identities is most salient or important to us can shift dramatically depending on the context. In one context, your identity as a doctor might be most important. In another, your identity as a parent. In another, your identity as a fan of a particular band. Intergroup conflict often arises when one particular identity, e.g., political or national, becomes so overwhelmingly salient that it eclipses all others, creating a stark and simplified us versus them world. Understanding social identity theory provides a powerful framework for reducing intergroup conflict. If conflict is driven by the need for positive distinctiveness between groups, then strategies that blur the lines between groups or create a new, superordinate, more inclusive identity can be highly effective. This is precisely what happened in the final phase of the Robbers Cave experiment. By introducing a superordinate goal, the experimenters encouraged the eagles and rattlers to recategorize themselves into a new single ingroup, we the campers. As this new shared social identity became more salient, the old, conflicting identities faded in importance, and the hostility dissolved. This suggests that the path to transcending tribalism lies in finding and emphasizing our shared, common humanity, a social identity that includes all of us. As you continue to fall asleep, gently bring your awareness to the many we's that you are a part of, your family, your community, your profession, your nation, the groups of people who share your passions. Feel the subtle sense of pride, of belonging, of identity that these memberships provide. Acknowledge that this is a fundamental part of your human nature, this deep need for a social we. Now, with the same gentle awareness, notice how the existence of a we automatically creates a they, and how your mind subtly favors the we. See this not as a moral failing, but as the automatic working of your mind's social identity process. Find deep relaxation in this understanding. It is a key to compassion both for yourself and for others. By seeing the mechanism, we can learn to hold our own group identities more lightly, and to see the humanity in those who belong to other tribes. Resting peacefully, a unique individual, yet also a part of the vast, mysterious, and deeply interconnected web of human social identity. Echo chambers and filter bubbles. We have seen how our minds are wired for tribalism, how we instinctively form an us, and how our self-esteem is tied to the perceived superiority of our ingroup. In the modern digital world, this ancient psychology has combined with new technology to create a powerful and often invisible phenomenon that shapes our beliefs, intensifies our divisions, and distorts our perception of reality. We now enter the world of echo chambers and filter bubbles. An echo chamber is a metaphorical space where you are primarily exposed to information and opinions that confirm your existing beliefs, amplified and repeated by like-minded people. A filter bubble, a term coined by internet activist Eli Pariser, is a more personalized version of this, a unique universe of information created for you by the algorithms of social media and search engines, which filter content based on your past behavior, your location, and your inferred interests. These two concepts describe the modern architecture of our social reality, a psychology mystery of the digital age that reveals how technology can supercharge our innate tribal tendencies. The mindfuck is realizing that your view of the world might be a carefully curated, self-validating illusion, questioning whether you are seeing a true reflection of reality or just a mirror of your own tribe's beliefs. Contemplating this invisible filtering is a crucial step towards intellectual freedom and a more peaceful, relaxed mind as you fall asleep. Let's begin by understanding the psychological foundations that make these bubbles so powerful. They are built upon the bedrock of confirmation bias, our natural human tendency to seek out, interpret, and remember information that confirms what we already believe, while avoiding or dismissing information that challenges our views. This is a cognitive shortcut that makes us feel secure and consistent, but it also makes us resistant to learning and changing our minds. An echo chamber is essentially a social structure that provides a constant, powerful dose of confirmation. Within the chamber, your beliefs are not challenged, they are validated. Your opinions are not questioned, they are applauded. Dissenting voices are rare, and when they do appear, they are often quickly dismissed or shouted down by the unified voice of the group. Social media platforms are particularly effective at creating and maintaining these echo chambers. We choose to follow, friend, and subscribe to people and sources that we already agree with. We mute, block, or unfriend those who express dissenting views. Over time, our social media feed becomes a highly curated reflection of our own in-group's perspective. The information we see is pre-filtered by our own choices, creating a closed loop where our beliefs are constantly reinforced, making them seem more popular, more correct, and more universally accepted than they actually are in the wider world. This social validation feels good. It strengthens our social identity and reinforces our sense of belonging to the right tribe. Now, let's layer on the technological component, the filter bubble. This is the invisible, algorithmic filtering that happens without our direct, conscious choice. Platforms like YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, and Google do not show you a neutral, objective view of the world. Their primary goal is to maximize your engagement, to keep you watching, clicking, and scrolling for as long as possible. To do this, their algorithms learn what you like. They track every click, every like, every share, every second you linger on a piece of content. They build a complex profile of your preferences, your beliefs, your political leanings, your fears, and your desires. Then, they use this profile to show you more of what they think you want to see. If you watch a video espousing a certain political viewpoint, the recommendation engine will serve you another, perhaps slightly more extreme video on the same topic. If you click on articles about a particular conspiracy theory, you will be shown more articles that support and elaborate on that theory. The algorithm is not designed to show you the truth or a balanced perspective. It is designed to show you what will keep you engaged, and what keeps us engaged is often content that confirms our biases and stokes our emotions. The result is a personalized filter bubble, an invisible informational barrier that separates us from differing viewpoints and diverse information. The mystery is that this process is largely invisible to us. We feel like we are freely exploring a vast ocean of information, but we are actually navigating a small, personalized pond whose shores have been invisibly walled off by algorithms. The mindfuck of echo chambers and filter bubbles is the profound realization that two people can be looking at the same internet, living in the same country, and yet be inhabiting entirely different informational realities. One person's reality, as presented through their feeds, might be one where their political party is always righteous, their beliefs are common sense, and the opposing side is a monolithic caricature of evil and ignorance. Another person's reality will be the exact mirror image. Both will feel that their view is based on a constant stream of overwhelming evidence, because that is all their bubble allows them to see. This is how social and political polarization becomes so deeply entrenched. It's not just that we disagree on values, we no longer even agree on the basic facts of reality because we are not being shown the same set of facts. The consequences of this informational fragmentation are profound. It can lead to increased extremism, as people are fed more and more intense versions of their existing beliefs without any moderating, countervailing influence. It erodes our capacity for empathy and understanding towards the outgroup. If we never encounter their genuine arguments or see them as complex individuals, it is easy to dismiss them as ignorant or malicious. It undermines the possibility of a shared public debate, a common ground necessary for a functioning democracy. It can make us overconfident in our own knowledge, as we mistake the consensus of our echo chamber for the consensus of the world. It is a powerful mechanism for reinforcing the most divisive aspects of our innate tribalism. So, how can we hope to pierce these bubbles and resist the pull of the echo chamber? It requires a conscious and deliberate effort to seek out intellectual diversity. We must actively look for and engage with the smartest, most charitable arguments from people we disagree with. This is not about both sidesism or abandoning our own values, but about understanding the genuine perspectives of others and challenging our own assumptions. We can make a conscious effort to follow people, writers, or publications from a range of different viewpoints. We can use tools that help to reveal our own filter bubbles or use search engines that are less personalized like DuckDuckGo. It also requires a shift in our mindset. We must cultivate intellectual humility, the recognition that we do not have all the answers and that our own perspective is inevitably limited and biased. We must practice curiosity about why other people believe what they do, rather than simply dismissing them. Engaging in good faith conversations with people outside our tribe, with a genuine desire to listen and understand rather than to win the argument, is a powerful antidote. As you continue to fall asleep, gently bring your awareness to the streams of information you consume in your daily life. Consider the voices you listen to, the pages you follow, the videos that are recommended to you. Acknowledge the comforting, validating warmth of the echo chamber and the invisible, personalized walls of the filter bubble. You do not need to judge this. It is a natural consequence of human psychology and modern technology, but find deep relaxation in your own power of awareness, in the knowledge that you can consciously choose to step outside the bubble. You can choose to listen to different voices. You can choose curiosity over certainty, resting peacefully with a quiet commitment to a more open, more balanced, and more compassionate engagement with the vast and diverse world of ideas. The spread of beliefs, memetics, and social contagion. We have seen how our minds form tribes and how technology creates echo chambers that reinforce our beliefs. But what is the nature of a belief itself as it moves through a population? How do ideas, ideologies, rumors, and cultural trends spread from person to person, sometimes with the speed and ferocity of a virus? This brings us to the fascinating and controversial concept of memetics and the broader science of social contagion. Memetics, a term coined by evolutionary biologist Richard Dawkins, proposes that we can think of ideas, or memes, as replicators much like genes. A meme is a unit of cultural information, a catchy tune, a religious belief, a fashion trend, a scientific theory, a viral internet image that spreads from mind to mind through imitation. In this view, our minds are not just thinkers of thoughts, but are also hosts for these self-replicating ideas. This is a profound mindfuck that questions the very authorship of our own beliefs, suggesting that we may simply be the vehicles for ideas that have their own selfish agenda to spread and survive. Understanding the dynamics of social contagion is a deep psychology mystery that reveals the invisible currents that shape our collective consciousness, inviting deep relaxation through a detached, epidemiological view of our own mental landscape as you fall asleep. Let's begin with the core idea of the meme. In his book The Selfish Gene, Dawkins was looking for another example of a replicator to illustrate the power of evolutionary principles. He proposed that just as the gene is the basic unit of biological evolution, the meme is the basic unit of cultural evolution. Memes compete for a scarce resource, human attention and memory. Some memes are better survivors than others. A successful meme is one that is good at getting itself copied from one brain to another. Its success has nothing to do with whether it is true, good, or beautiful. It only has to do with its ability to replicate. What makes a meme successful? Several factors contribute to a meme's fitness. Fidelity, the ability to be copied accurately without too much mutation. Fecundity, the speed and number of copies it can generate. And longevity, its ability to persist over time. Memes with high fidelity, fecundity, and longevity will be more successful and will spread through the cultural gene pool. For example, a simple, memorable nursery rhyme is a highly successful meme. It's easy to remember and repeat accurately, high fidelity. Children love to sing and share it, high fecundity, and it has persisted for generations, high longevity. This evolutionary perspective provides a powerful, if somewhat cynical, framework for understanding the spread of beliefs. A religious belief system, from a purely memetic viewpoint, can be seen as a complex, co-adapted memeplex, a collection of mutually supporting memes. It might include memes for faith, which discourages critical questioning, for proselytizing, which encourages spreading the meme, for martyrdom, which ensures the meme's survival even under threat, and for raising children within the belief system, ensuring vertical transmission. The truth of the religion is, from this perspective, irrelevant to its success as a memeplex. What matters is how well its component ideas work together to ensure their own replication. This same logic can be applied to political ideologies, conspiracy theories, or even scientific theories. A conspiracy theory might be factually baseless, but it can be a highly successful meme if it provides a simple, emotionally satisfying explanation for a complex event, if it taps into pre-existing distrust of authority, and if it encourages its believers to wake others up by spreading the word. The idea spreads not because it is true, but because it is psychologically sticky. This is the central mindfuck of memetics. It suggests that we are not entirely in control of the ideas that inhabit our minds. We are the environment in which ideas live, reproduce, and compete. Our brains are the primordial soup for cultural evolution. This questions our sense of intellectual autonomy. Do we choose our beliefs, or do the most successful memes choose us as their host? This perspective can feel dehumanizing, reducing our most cherished convictions to the status of self-replicating viruses of the mind. While the formal science of memetics has been criticized for being overly metaphorical and difficult to test rigorously, the broader concept of social contagion is a well-established area of social psychology and network science. Research has shown that a wide range of phenomena can spread through social networks in a manner strikingly similar to the spread of infectious diseases. Obesity, smoking, happiness, loneliness, and even specific political opinions have been shown to spread through social ties. If your close friend becomes happy, your own chances of being happy increase. If your friend's friend quits smoking, your own chances of quitting also increase, even if you don't know that person. These are not necessarily conscious acts of imitation, but subtle, unconscious processes of influence, normalization, and emotional contagion. The mystery lies in the precise mechanisms of this transmission. How exactly does an idea or a behavior infect another person? It's a complex interplay of factors we've already explored. Conformity and the desire to align with our in-group make us susceptible to adopting the beliefs of those around us. Social proof leads us to believe that popular ideas are more likely to be true. The authority and charisma of certain individuals can make them super spreaders of ideas. And the structure of our social networks, especially in the age of social media with its echo chambers and filter bubbles, can dramatically affect the speed and reach of this social contagion. Understanding our susceptibility to social contagion is both humbling and empowering. It's humbling because it reveals how much of our inner world is shaped by the social environment we are immersed in. Our beliefs are often less a product of individual, rational deliberation and more a product of our social zip code. But it is also empowering because awareness of these mechanisms is the first step towards a more conscious and deliberate relationship with the ideas we encounter. We can learn to be more critical consumers of information. We can consciously choose to expose ourselves to diverse ideas, to inoculate ourselves against the contagion of a single perspective. We can ask ourselves before adopting a belief, am I accepting this because it's well supported by evidence, or because it's popular within my tribe? As you continue to fall asleep, imagine your mind as a quiet, fertile landscape, and see the beliefs and ideas of the world as seeds, carried on the winds of social interaction. Some seeds are nutritious, some are inert, some are invasive. They land in your mind, and some of them take root, not always because you consciously chose them, but because the conditions were right. Contemplate the mystery of this process, this social contagion of thought. Let go of the need to feel that every one of your beliefs is a product of your own pure, independent reason. Find deep relaxation in acknowledging your profound connection to the collective mind of humanity. You are a part of a vast, ongoing conversation, a host to ideas and a spreader of them, resting peacefully, aware of the subtle currents of belief that flow through us all. The nature of charisma and leadership. In our exploration of how beliefs and behaviors spread through social networks, we must now turn our attention to the powerful catalysts of this process: leaders. And not just any leaders, but those who possess a mysterious and compelling quality known as charisma. A charismatic leader can inspire immense devotion, galvanize a movement, and persuade people to embrace new, often radical, ideas, sometimes for good and sometimes for ill. But what is charisma? Is it a magical, innate gift bestowed upon a select few? Or is it a specific set of learnable behaviors and communication patterns? The nature of charisma and leadership is a profound psychology mystery, a deep secret of social reality that reveals the powerful interplay between a leader's personal qualities and the psychological needs and desires of their followers. It questions our own rational autonomy, revealing our deep-seated, often unconscious, yearning to follow a compelling vision. Understanding this dynamic is crucial for navigating the social world with wisdom and discernment, inviting deep relaxation through a clearer understanding of the forces of social influence as you fall asleep. The word charisma comes from the Greek meaning gift of grace, and was first brought into sociology by Max Weber. He described it as a quality of an individual personality by virtue of which they are set apart from ordinary people and treated as endowed with supernatural, superhuman, or at least specifically exceptional powers or qualities. This captures the almost magical aura that a charismatic leader can possess. They seem to radiate a confidence, a conviction, and a vision that can be deeply captivating. So, what are the psychological components of this powerful quality? Modern research has moved beyond the idea of charisma as a mystical gift and has identified several key ingredients. One of the most important is the ability to articulate a compelling and visionary message. Charismatic leaders are master storytellers. They don't just present a plan, they frame it within a larger, emotionally resonant narrative. They often speak of a glorious past, a corrupt present, and a hopeful, idealized future that we, the Ingroup, can achieve together. They simplify complex issues into a clear, morally charged struggle between us versus them, good versus evil. This narrative provides followers with a sense of meaning, purpose, and a clear identity within a grand historical drama. Another key component is the expression of unshakable conviction and confidence. Charismatic leaders project an aura of absolute certainty in their beliefs and their ability to succeed. This confidence can be highly contagious. In a world of uncertainty and complexity, people are often drawn to a leader who offers a sense of clarity and direction. The leader's confidence becomes a psychological anchor for the followers, reducing their own anxiety and doubt. They feel that the leader knows the way. This is often accompanied by powerful nonverbal communication, intense eye contact, expressive gestures, a confident posture, and a resonant vocal tone. These behaviors unconsciously signal dominance, conviction, and passion, bypassing our rational filters and speaking directly to our more primal, emotional brain. Empathy, or at least the appearance of empathy, is also crucial. A charismatic leader must make their followers feel seen, understood, and valued. They often articulate the perceived grievances, the hidden desires, and the unspoken hopes of their audience, making people feel that this leader truly gets me. They create a powerful emotional bond, a sense of rapport that fosters deep trust and loyalty. This connection makes followers more receptive to the leader's message and more willing to follow their directives. The mindfuck of charisma is its ability to short-circuit our critical thinking. The combination of a powerful emotional narrative, an aura of supreme confidence, and a feeling of personal connection can be so intoxicating that it leads people to suspend their disbelief and follow a leader without carefully scrutinizing their ideas or the factual basis for their claims. Charisma appeals to our subconscious mind, to our ancient, evolutionary desire for a strong, confident tribal leader who can provide safety and a sense of collective purpose. It is a form of social contagion where emotions and beliefs are transmitted not through logical argument, but through psychological resonance. This questions our self-perception as rational, independent thinkers, revealing our deep-seated vulnerability to powerful, emotionally charged leadership. The psychology mystery deepens when we consider the dark side of charisma. The very same qualities that can inspire people to achieve great and noble things, to fight for civil rights, to innovate in science, to build compassionate communities, can also be used to manipulate people into committing horrific acts. Many of the most destructive cult leaders and tyrannical dictators in history have been described as possessing immense personal charisma. They use the same techniques, a compelling vision, often of a pure utopia, absolute confidence, and an ability to connect with the fears and desires of their followers, but they channel them towards paranoid, destructive, and dehumanizing ends. This reveals that charisma itself is a morally neutral tool. Its effect depends entirely on the underlying values and intentions of the leader. This highlights the importance of the followers in the charismatic equation. Charisma is not just a quality of a leader, it is a relationship between a leader and their followers. A charismatic leader often emerges during times of crisis, uncertainty, or social distress, when people are feeling a deep psychological need for a savior, for a clear and simple answer to complex problems. The leader becomes a screen upon which the followers project their own hopes and desires for a better world. The leader's power is, in large part, granted to them by the psychological needs of the people. Understanding the psychology of charisma and leadership is essential for becoming a more discerning citizen and a more conscious member of any group. It requires us to learn how to separate the style of a message from its substance. We can learn to recognize the techniques of charismatic communication, the powerful narratives, the emotional appeals, the confident assertions. This awareness allows us to appreciate the message's power without being automatically swept away by it. It enables us to step back and ask the critical questions. What is the actual evidence for these claims? What are the logical implications of this vision? Does this leader's message promote inclusivity and compassion, or does it rely on fear and the demonization of an outgroup? As you continue to fall asleep, gently reflect on the leaders and influential figures you have admired in your own life. What was it about them that was so compelling? Was it their ideas, their confidence, their passion, their ability to make you feel understood? Acknowledge the deep and natural human yearning for guidance, for a clear vision, for a leader to believe in. See the power of charisma not as a magical force, but as a complex psychological interplay. Find deep relaxation in your own capacity for discernment, the ability to be inspired by a powerful vision while still maintaining your own critical judgment. Resting peacefully, aware of the powerful currents of social influence, yet anchored in the quiet, independent center of your own mind. The psychology of ideology. We have spoken of tribes, of beliefs, and of leaders. Let us now explore the powerful frameworks that bring all these elements together, the vast, intricate belief systems that provide individuals and groups with a comprehensive map of social reality. We delve into the psychology of ideology. An ideology is more than just a single opinion. It is an interconnected system of beliefs, values, and ideas that shapes how we interpret the world and our place within it. Liberalism, conservatism, socialism, feminism, religious fundamentalism. These are all ideologies. They provide their adherents with a sense of identity, a moral compass, and a set of answers to life's big questions. Who are we? What is the nature of good and evil? What is the ideal society and how do we achieve it? The mystery is why we are so drawn to these all-encompassing belief systems. What psychological needs do they fulfill? And why do they so often become the basis for the most intractable and passionate forms of us versus them conflict? Understanding the psychology of ideology is a profound secret of social reality, questioning the very possibility of a neutral, objective worldview and inviting deep relaxation through a compassionate understanding of the deep human need for meaning and moral order as you fall asleep. At its core, an ideology serves several fundamental psychological functions. One of the most important is epistemic, the need to know, to have a coherent understanding of the world. The world is a complex, confusing, and often frightening place. An ideology provides a cognitive shortcut, a prepackaged framework that simplifies this complexity. It offers a clear narrative with heroes and villains, causes and effects, problems and solutions. For its adherents, the ideology reduces uncertainty and provides a sense of clarity and predictability. It makes the world feel knowable and meaningful. This is deeply comforting to the human mind, which is naturally averse to ambiguity and chaos. A second crucial function is existential. As we explored in the context of terror management theory, humans are burdened with the awareness of their own mortality. An ideology can serve as a powerful defense against this existential terror. By identifying with an ideology, we become part of something larger and more enduring than our own finite lives. A nation, a cause, a tradition, a movement that will continue after we are gone. This provides a sense of symbolic immortality. Many ideologies also offer a story of purpose, a grand design or historical mission that imbues our individual lives with a sense of significance. Our personal struggles become part of a larger, meaningful drama. A third function is relational, fulfilling our deep need to belong. An ideology is the glue that binds a tribe together. It provides a shared set of beliefs, values, and rituals that create a powerful sense of social identity and group solidarity. To be a member of an ideological group is to have a ready-made us. This shared worldview fosters trust, cooperation, and mutual support within the in-group. The feeling of being understood, of sharing a common reality with others, is a deeply rewarding experience. The ideology provides not just a set of ideas but a community. However, these very functions that make ideologies so psychologically appealing are also what make them so potentially dangerous. The need for epistemic clarity can lead to cognitive closure, a desire for a firm, final answer, and an unwillingness to tolerate ambiguity or dissent. This can lead to dogmatism, rigidity, and a profound resistance to any evidence that contradicts the ideological framework. The confirmation bias runs rampant, as believers selectively seek out information that validates their worldview and dismiss or demonize information that does not. The existential function of providing meaning can lead to a sense of moral superiority and a Manichaean worldview that divides the world into a stark battle between good, us, and evil, them. The ideology becomes not just a set of ideas but a sacred truth. Challenges to the ideology are perceived not as intellectual disagreements, but as existential threats, attacks on the very foundation of one's meaning and morality. And the relational function of creating an us almost inevitably creates a corresponding them. An ideology often defines itself not just by what it stands for, but by what it stands against. The outgroup, those who subscribe to a different ideology, are often stereotyped, dehumanized, and seen as not just wrong, but as immoral, irrational, or even subhuman. This is the dark side of ideological cohesion. It can justify prejudice, discrimination, and, in its most extreme forms, mass violence, all in the name of a righteous cause. The mindfuck of the psychology of ideology is the realization that our most cherished, comprehensive beliefs about the world might be adopted and held not just for their logical coherence or factual accuracy, but for the deep psychological comfort they provide. They soothe our fear of uncertainty, our fear of death, and our fear of social isolation. This questions our self-perception as rational, free-thinking individuals. It suggests that we are all, to some extent, true believers, psychologically motivated to protect our chosen worldview from threat. The mystery is the degree to which we are all living inside these self-constructed, self-validating bubbles of belief. So, is it possible to think without an ideology? Most social scientists would argue probably not. We are meaning-seeking creatures, and we seem to need these large-scale narrative frameworks to make sense of the world. The goal then is not to be ideology-free, but to cultivate ideological flexibility and intellectual humility. This involves recognizing the psychological functions that our own ideology serves for us. It means becoming aware of the ways our beliefs might be driven by our need for certainty, meaning, or belonging. It requires a conscious effort to step outside of our own ideological echo chamber, to engage charitably with the arguments and perspectives of other ideologies, and to see the shared humanity in those who belong to different ideological tribes. It is the difficult but essential work of holding our own beliefs with a degree of provisionality, of recognizing that our map of reality is not the territory itself. As you continue to fall asleep, gently bring your awareness to the large-scale beliefs that structure your own understanding of the world, your political, philosophical, or spiritual worldview. Acknowledge the comfort, the clarity, and the sense of belonging this ideology provides. See it not as an absolute truth but as a map, a story, a tool for navigating a complex reality. Now, with a sense of gentle detachment, picture other maps, other stories held just as dearly by other people. Recognize the same deep human needs for meaning and order at work in them. Find deep relaxation in this meta-perspective, in the understanding of the very psychology of belief systems. Let go of the need for your ideology to be the only right one, and rest peacefully in the quiet, compassionate space of knowing that we are all just trying to find our way through the profound mystery of existence with the maps we have been given. Moral Foundations Theory, the 6 Pillars of Morality. We have just explored the powerful, often divisive nature of ideology. We have seen how different tribes can inhabit entirely different moral and social realities. But why are these divisions so predictable and so persistent? Why do political and cultural conflicts so often seem to revolve around the same recurring themes of care, fairness, loyalty, authority, and sanctity? To understand this, we now delve into one of the most influential and insightful frameworks in modern moral psychology, Moral Foundations Theory. Developed by social psychologist Jonathan Haidt and his colleagues, this theory proposes that our complex moral judgments are rooted in a set of universal, innate, and evolutionarily prepared psychological systems or foundations. It's as if our minds come equipped with a set of moral taste buds, each attuned to a different aspect of the social world. The theory suggests that different cultures and ideologies achieve their unique character by emphasizing, celebrating, and building upon different combinations of these universal foundations. This is a profound secret of social reality, a psychology mystery that questions the idea that morality is a single, monolithic thing, suggesting instead that it is a rich and varied landscape with at least 6 core dimensions. Understanding this moral palette is a key to deciphering the logic of different tribes and can be a powerful source of deep relaxation through enhanced empathy and understanding as you fall asleep. Let's gently explore these 6 moral foundations. Each one is thought to have evolved to solve a specific adaptive challenge faced by our ancestors in their intensely social lives. The first foundation is care versus harm. This is the foundation that is most obvious to us. It is rooted in our long evolution as mammals with a need to care for vulnerable offspring. It makes us sensitive to signs of suffering and cruelty, and it triggers feelings of compassion and a desire to protect and care for others. This foundation underlies virtues like kindness, gentleness, and nurturance. The original trigger was the suffering of our own kin, but this circle of care can be expanded to include our nation, all of humanity, or even all sentient beings. It is the foundation that makes us cringe at violence and feel warmth at acts of altruism. The second foundation is fairness versus cheating. This evolved to help us reap the benefits of cooperation while avoiding the risks of exploitation. It involves 2 related but distinct aspects. On one hand, it's about proportionality, the intuition that people should get what they deserve based on their contributions, that hard work should be rewarded and laziness should not, often emphasized by conservatives. On the other hand, it's about equality, the intuition that people should be treated equally and that oppression of the weak by the powerful is wrong, often emphasized by liberals. This foundation underlies our powerful sense of justice, our anger at cheating and free riding, and our desire for reciprocity. These first 2 foundations, care and fairness, are often considered the primary, and sometimes the only pillars of morality in modern, secular Western societies. However, moral foundations theory argues that this is an incomplete picture. There are at least 4 other foundations that are crucial for understanding the full spectrum of human morality, particularly in more traditional societies and on the political right. The third foundation is loyalty versus betrayal. This is rooted in our long history of living in rivalrous tribes. It makes us sensitive to signs of group membership and motivates us to be good, trustworthy team players, to protect our in-group, and to punish those who betray it. This foundation underlies virtues like patriotism, self-sacrifice for the group, and team spirit. It is the foundation that makes us swell with pride for our team's victory and feel contempt for traitors. It is the very heart of the us versus them psychology. The fourth foundation is authority versus subversion. This evolved to help us navigate and create stable social hierarchies. It is based on a history of primate social structures and makes us sensitive to signs of rank, status, and respect for tradition. It underlies virtues like leadership, followership, deference to legitimate authority, and respect for the institutions and traditions that provide stability. It is the foundation that makes us feel respect for our elders, for established laws, and for those in positions of leadership, but also makes us sensitive to acts of subversion or disrespect that threaten the social order. The fifth foundation is sanctity versus degradation. This is rooted in the ancient adaptive challenge of avoiding pathogens, contaminants, and parasites. The original emotion was physical disgust, a mechanism to keep us away from spoiled food or diseased bodies. However, this foundation was gradually co-opted by cultures to apply to a wide range of symbolic objects, ideas, and behaviors. It makes us feel that some things are sacred, pure, and inviolable, and that other things are profane, impure, and disgusting. This foundation underlies religious notions of the sacred and the sinful, dietary laws, like kosher or halal, and many of our moral intuitions about sexuality, the sanctity of life, and the importance of living in a noble, less carnal way. It is the foundation that makes us feel a sense of reverence in a cathedral, and a sense of disgust at acts we deem degrading or unnatural. The sixth and more recently proposed foundation is liberty versus oppression. This is rooted in the experience of being dominated or controlled by alpha individuals or groups. It triggers a desire for freedom, an antipathy towards bullies and tyrants, and a motivation to unite with others to resist the oppressor. It is the "don't tread on me" instinct, a powerful desire for personal and collective autonomy. The mindfuck of moral foundations theory is its revelation that different political and cultural tribes may not just have different opinions on the same moral issues. They may be living in fundamentally different moral realities. Research by Haidt and his colleagues suggests that political liberals tend to build their moral systems primarily on the first two foundations, care and fairness, especially the equality aspect. Political conservatives, on the other hand, tend to use all six foundations more equally, placing significant moral weight not just on care and fairness, but also on loyalty, authority, and sanctity. This is why political debates can feel so intractable. The two sides are not just disagreeing, they are often speaking different moral languages, appealing to different fundamental intuitions about what morality is. One side cries, compassion. The other cries, loyalty. One side shouts, equality. The other shouts, respect for tradition. Each is activating a different set of moral taste buds. This psychology mystery forces us to question our own moral certainty. It suggests that our own moral worldview, which may feel like the only rational and compassionate one, is likely built upon a specific and perhaps limited subset of the full human moral palette. It invites us to try and understand the moral matrix of those we disagree with, to see that their positions, while different from ours, may be rooted in genuine, deeply held moral intuitions that are just as valid to them. As you continue to fall asleep, gently contemplate these six moral foundations, a palette of intuitive colors from which all human moralities are painted: care, fairness, loyalty, authority, sanctity, and liberty. Acknowledge the ones that resonate most strongly with you, and then, with a sense of open curiosity, consider the ones that you value less, but which are deeply important to others. Let this understanding dissolve any rigid sense of moral superiority. Find deep relaxation in this more complex, more nuanced, and more compassionate view of the moral world. See the different tribes not as fundamentally good or evil, but as different cultures emphasizing different parts of our shared, evolved moral nature. Resting peacefully with a broader and more understanding perspective on the deep, intricate, and multifaceted nature of the human moral mind. The role of empathy in social bonding. Having explored the moral foundations that structure our social worlds, let us now focus on the emotional glue that holds these worlds together, the very force that allows us to form an us in the first place. We delve into the profound mystery of empathy. Empathy is our ability to understand and, crucially, to share the feelings of another person. It is the capacity to step outside of our own skin and imaginatively experience the world from someone else's perspective, to feel their joy as our own joy, their pain as our own pain. This remarkable ability is the bedrock of compassion, altruism, and all meaningful social bonding. But what is the nature of this connection? Is it a magical, ineffable resonance, or a complex cognitive and neurological process? The role of empathy in social bonding is a deep secret of social reality, questioning the very boundaries of the self and revealing the profound ways in which we are wired for connection. Understanding this faculty is a pathway to deep relaxation, as it attunes us to the fundamental kindness and connection that are possible in the human experience as you fall asleep. Psychologists often distinguish between two main components of empathy. The first is cognitive empathy, sometimes called perspective taking. This is the more intellectual, head-based ability to understand another person's mental state, to know what they are thinking, what their motivations are, what their perspective is. It is the ability to build a theory of mind for another person. Cognitive empathy is crucial for effective communication, negotiation, and social coordination. You can understand someone's perspective without necessarily sharing their feelings. The second, and perhaps more profound, component is affective empathy, or emotional empathy. This is the more visceral, heart-based ability to actually feel what another person is feeling. It is the vicarious experience of another's emotional state. When you see a friend who is grieving and you feel a pang of sadness in your own chest, that is affective empathy. When you watch a child laugh with delight and you feel a corresponding warmth and joy, that is affective empathy. This is not just understanding. It is a form of emotional resonance, a shared feeling that temporarily dissolves the boundary between self and other. This is the component that is most directly linked to compassion and the motivation to help others. The neuroscientific basis for empathy is a fascinating and active area of research. One of the most exciting discoveries has been the existence of mirror neurons. These are remarkable brain cells that fire both when we perform an action and when we observe someone else performing the same action. When you see someone pick up a cup, a part of your brain's motor cortex activates as if you were picking up the cup yourself. This neural mirroring system is thought to be a fundamental building block for understanding the actions and intentions of others. It allows us to simulate their experience in our own brains. This system is also believed to be a foundation for effective empathy. When we see someone express an emotion through their facial expression, their posture, their tone of voice, our mirror neuron system might subtly simulate that expression in our own brain, which in turn triggers the corresponding emotional state in us. We feel their pain, in part because our brain is mirroring the neural state associated with their expression of pain. This provides a powerful, bottom-up, neurological explanation for our capacity for connection. We are literally wired to resonate with each other. This deep, automatic empathy is the glue that creates social bonding in our tribes. It fosters trust, promotes cooperation, and allows for the deep attachments that form the basis of family, friendship, and community. From an evolutionary perspective, empathy was crucial for the survival of a highly social species like ours. It facilitated parental care, group cohesion, and the cooperative behaviors necessary for hunting and defense. Thus, is held together by a web of shared feelings. However, the mystery of empathy is that it is not a simple, universal solvent for all human conflict. Our empathetic response is powerful, but it is also deeply biased. We tend to feel empathy much more strongly for members of our own in-group, our family, our friends, our tribe, than for members of an out-group. This is the empathy gap. The very same mechanism that creates powerful bonds within a group can contribute to indifference or even hostility between groups. It is easy to feel the pain of a person who looks and sounds like us, who shares our culture and beliefs. It is often much harder to feel the pain of a distant stranger, someone we have labeled as them. The mindfuck of empathy is this profound duality. It is both the source of our greatest compassion and, through its selective application, a potential enabler of our worst tribal instincts. The circle of our empathy is not naturally all-inclusive. It is something that must be consciously and deliberately expanded. The challenge of creating a more just and peaceful world is, in many ways, the challenge of extending our natural empathetic response beyond the narrow confines of our own tribe to include all of humanity. This is where cognitive empathy and conscious reasoning must play a role. While our affective empathy might be biased towards our in-group, our cognitive empathy allows us to understand that the suffering of an out-group member is just as real and valid as the suffering of someone in our own group. We can use our reason to override our biased emotional responses. We can make a conscious choice to care. This is the essence of mature moral development, the expansion of the circle of compassion. As you continue to fall asleep, gently bring your awareness to the feeling of connection. Recall a moment when you felt a deep sense of empathy for another person, a time when you truly felt what they were feeling. Acknowledge this capacity within you as a profound gift, the source of love, kindness, and connection. Now, with the same gentle awareness, acknowledge the boundaries of this feeling, the subtle ways in which it is easier to feel for you than for them. See this not as a personal failing but as part of our shared evolutionary heritage, a psychology mystery we must all work with. Find deep relaxation in the potential for expansion, in the knowledge that your circle of empathy is not fixed, but can be widened through conscious intention and compassion. Resting peacefully, feeling your connection to all those who share this human experience, within your tribe and beyond. Dehumanization, the psychology of the other. We have just explored the beautiful, connecting power of empathy. We must now turn with sober and compassionate awareness to its dark and terrifying opposite, dehumanization. This is the psychological process of denying full humanity to others, of perceiving an individual or a social group as less than human. It is the mental act that transforms a fellow person into an object, a pest, a monster, or a thing. Dehumanization is not a rare pathology. It is a deeply disturbing psychological mechanism that can be activated in ordinary people under certain social and political conditions. It is the essential psychological lubricant for prejudice, discrimination, and the very worst forms of intergroup violence, from slavery and oppression to war and genocide. Understanding the psychology of the other is a chilling and profoundly important secret of social reality. It is a mind-fuck that questions our own moral stability, revealing the frightening ease with which our minds can strip others of their humanity. Contemplating this dark potential is not meant to induce fear, but to foster a vigilant and powerful commitment to compassion, a form of deep relaxation that comes from understanding the darkness in order to better choose the light as you fall asleep. The process of dehumanization is deeply intertwined with the us versus them psychology we have been exploring. It is the most extreme expression of outgroup derogation. It often begins with stereotyping, but it goes much further. While a stereotype might attribute negative traits to a group, dehumanization denies them the very qualities we associate with being human: a mind, a capacity for complex emotions like love and remorse, a moral compass, a culture, and individual identity. The other is seen as fundamentally different, as belonging to a lower category of being. There are different forms of dehumanization. Animalistic dehumanization involves equating an outgroup with animals. Throughout history, oppressive regimes have referred to their victims as rats, cockroaches, vermin, or apes. This type of language is not just insulting, it is psychologically potent. It taps into our deep-seated disgust mechanisms, which evolved to help us avoid pathogens and contaminants, and applies them to other human beings. By framing the outgroup as a form of pestilence, it makes violence against them seem not like murder, but like a necessary act of purification or pest control. It removes the moral inhibitions against harming a fellow human. Another form is mechanistic dehumanization, which involves seeing others as inanimate objects or unthinking machines. This form denies the outgroup emotional depth, warmth, and individuality. It is often seen in bureaucratic or systemic forms of cruelty, where people are treated as numbers, statistics, or cogs in a machine, their individual humanity and suffering rendered invisible. This allows for a cold, detached form of cruelty, where perpetrators can inflict harm without feeling any empathetic connection to their victims. What are the psychological conditions that allow for dehumanization? It is often fueled by a powerful ideology that provides a moral justification for the process. This ideology typically identifies the outgroup as a fundamental threat to the ingroup's purity, safety, or way of life. The outgroup is framed as a source of contamination, a disease, or a mortal enemy. This creates a powerful sense of fear and moral righteousness within the ingroup, which can override the natural human aversion to harming others. Propaganda is a key tool in this process, constantly repeating dehumanizing language and imagery until it becomes a normalized way of thinking about the outgroup. The process is also facilitated by social conformity and obedience to authority. When dehumanizing language and behavior become the norm within a group, individuals may adopt it simply to fit in. When authority figures command or condone the mistreatment of a dehumanized group, individuals may cede their personal moral responsibility, as we saw in the Milgram experiments. A crucial psychological factor is emotional distance. It is much easier to dehumanize and inflict harm on people who are distant or abstract. This is why modern warfare, with its long-range weapons, can be so psychologically dangerous for those who perpetrate it. The victims are unseen, their humanity rendered invisible by distance. It is also why creating personal, humanizing contact between groups, as described in the contact hypothesis, is such a powerful antidote. Empathy requires a sense of shared humanity, and dehumanization is the process of systematically destroying that sense. The mindfuck of dehumanization is the terrifying realization that this is not a process reserved for monsters. It is a psychological potential that exists within all of us. The mental architecture that allows us to categorize people into us and them, to feel loyalty to our in-group and to obey authority, is the very same architecture that, under the right or wrong conditions, can be manipulated to produce dehumanizing thought and behavior. It is a dark side of our otherwise adaptive social nature. The mystery is the chilling ease of this transformation, the speed with which ordinary people can be induced to see their fellow humans as less than human. It questions the very stability of our moral compass, suggesting that it is deeply vulnerable to the influence of ideology, propaganda, and group pressure. Understanding the mechanisms of dehumanization is our most powerful defense against it. It begins with a vigilant awareness of dehumanizing language, both in our society and in our own thoughts. When we hear people referred to as animals, objects, or diseases, we must recognize it as a dangerous red flag. It involves cultivating empathy and perspective-taking, especially for members of outgroups. Actively seeking out the personal stories, the art, and the humanity of those who are different from us is a powerful act of resistance against the abstractions of stereotyping. It requires the courage to be a dissenting voice, to speak up against dehumanizing rhetoric, even when it is socially difficult to do so. And it requires the promotion of a shared, superordinate human identity, an us, that is inclusive of all people. As you continue to fall asleep, allow yourself to hold this difficult and sobering truth with compassionate awareness. Acknowledge the dark potential for dehumanization that lies within the human psyche, a shadow side of our tribal nature. See it not to despair but to understand, to be vigilant. Let this understanding foster a deep and powerful commitment to seeing the full, complex, and sacred humanity in every single person, both within and outside your own tribes. Find deep relaxation not by ignoring the darkness, but by strengthening your own inner light of empathy and compassion. Resting peacefully with a quiet, firm resolve to honor the shared humanity that binds us all. Collective illusions and pluralistic ignorance. We have seen how our individual minds can be led astray by biases and how group dynamics can lead to conformity and prejudice. Let us now explore a particularly strange and paradoxical secret of social reality, a phenomenon where an entire group of people can come to believe that a certain view is the group consensus, when in fact the majority of individuals in that group privately reject it. This is the mystery of pluralistic ignorance. It is a shared, collective illusion, a situation where no one believes but everyone thinks that everyone believes. This powerful psychological trap can lead to the perpetuation of unpopular social norms, the silencing of dissent, and a profound misunderstanding of our own collective reality. It is a subtle but powerful mindfuck that questions our ability to accurately perceive the beliefs of our own tribe, revealing how our fear of social isolation can create and sustain a collective fiction. Understanding this process can be a source of profound liberation and deep relaxation as you fall asleep. Let's unpack this counterintuitive idea with a classic example. Imagine a classroom where a professor has just delivered a complex and confusing lecture. The professor asks, "Are there any questions?" A student, let's call her Sarah, is completely lost. She looks around the room to gauge the reaction of her classmates. She sees a room full of impassive, silent faces. No one raises their hand. Based on this public evidence, Sarah makes a private inference. Wow, I must be the only one who didn't understand. Everyone else seems to have gotten it. I don't want to look stupid by asking a basic question. So she remains silent, pretending to understand. But here is the crux of pluralistic ignorance. Many, perhaps even most, of the other students in the room are in the exact same situation. They are also confused, but they too look around, see a sea of silent faces, and make the same incorrect inference that they are the only ones who are lost. Because everyone is privately confused but publicly appearing confident and knowledgeable, the entire group collectively enforces a norm of understanding that no one individually feels. This is a collective illusion born from the gap between our private feelings and our public behavior. This phenomenon is driven by a powerful combination of psychological forces we have already explored. The first is impression management and the fear of social embarrassment. We want to appear competent, knowledgeable, and in sync with the group. Admitting confusion, doubt, or a dissenting opinion carries the risk of social judgment. This motivates us to present a public self that is often more confident and conformist than our private self. The second force is our tendency to take others' public behavior at face value, while being acutely aware of our own inner doubts and anxieties. We assume that other people's outward actions are a direct reflection of their inner state, while we know that our own are often a carefully managed performance. We see their silent faces and assume understanding. We feel our own inner confusion and assume personal deficiency. This asymmetry of information, having privileged access to our own inner turmoil but only observing the curated public behavior of others, is a key engine of pluralistic ignorance. The consequences of this psychology mystery are widespread and can be profound. It can lead to the persistence of unpopular or even harmful social norms. The classic example is heavy drinking on college campuses. Studies have found that many students privately feel uncomfortable with the level of binge drinking, but they go along with it because they believe that most other students are completely comfortable with it. Each individual conforms to a perceived norm that is, in fact, not the true norm of private belief, but a norm sustained by the collective illusion of pluralistic ignorance. This same dynamic can explain why people often fail to intervene in emergencies, a key component of the bystander effect, which we will revisit. If no one else is acting, individuals may assume that others have a good reason for their inaction. Perhaps it's not a real emergency, even if everyone is privately feeling alarmed but is afraid to be the first to act. It can also explain the persistence of rigid or traditional norms in a community long after the majority of individuals have privately moved on, simply because no one is willing to be the first to voice their changed beliefs for fear of being ostracized. The mindfuck of pluralistic ignorance is the realization that entire social realities can be built upon a foundation of collective self-deception. The emperor has no clothes is the ultimate parable of this phenomenon. Everyone privately sees the truth, the emperor is naked, but everyone publicly pretends to see the clothes because they believe everyone else sees the clothes. The shared illusion is maintained by a shared fear of speaking the truth. This questions our very ability to know the will of the group or the consensus. The public behavior of a group can be a very poor indicator of its private beliefs. Our social reality can be a fragile, hollow construct. So, how can we break the spell of pluralistic ignorance? The solution is as simple as it is courageous: speaking the truth of one's private experience. When the student in the classroom finally raises their hand and says, "I'm sorry, I'm completely lost, could you explain that again?" it often triggers a cascade of relieved nods and other raised hands. The single act of puncturing the public illusion reveals the true shared private reality. It creates a moment of truth that dissolves the collective illusion. This highlights the immense power of a dissenting voice, which we will explore in a later segment. A single individual willing to risk social awkwardness to voice their authentic experience can liberate an entire group from a shared misunderstanding. Understanding this secret of social reality is incredibly empowering. It encourages us to be more skeptical of perceived group consensus. It reminds us that our own private feelings of doubt, confusion, or disagreement might be more widely shared than we think. It can give us the courage to voice our perspective, knowing that in doing so, we might not only be speaking for ourselves but also for the silent majority. As you continue to fall asleep, gently consider the times in your life when you have remained silent, assuming you were the only one feeling a certain way. Acknowledge the powerful, often invisible, pressure to conform to what you perceive to be the group norm. Contemplate the paradox that a group of individuals can collectively create a reality that none of them individually believe in. Find deep relaxation in the liberating insight this mystery provides, in the knowledge that your own authentic private experience has immense value, and that the simple act of speaking it can sometimes be the key that unlocks a collective illusion. Resting peacefully with a quiet confidence in your own perception, and a compassionate awareness of the silent, shared worlds that may lie just beneath the surface of social life. The wisdom and madness of crowds. We have explored the many ways that group dynamics can lead us astray, through conformity, obedience, and collective illusions. This might paint a bleak picture of our social nature, suggesting that the individual is wise and the group is foolish. But the social reality is far more complex and paradoxical than that. For every story of group failure, there is a story of incredible collective intelligence. This brings us to the fascinating and deeply mysterious duality known as the wisdom and madness of crowds. Under certain conditions, a group of ordinary individuals can exhibit a collective intelligence that is far greater than that of any single member. Yet, under other conditions, the very same group can descend into irrationality, panic, and a collective madness that is far worse than individual foolishness. What are the secret ingredients that separate a wise crowd from a mad one? This is a profound psychology mystery that questions the very nature of collective intelligence and decision-making. Contemplating this delicate balance is a pathway to understanding the full spectrum of our social potential, inviting deep relaxation as you fall asleep. Let's begin with the astonishing phenomenon of the wisdom of crowds. The classic story recounted by James Surowiecki in his book of the same name involves an ox at a country fair in the early 20th century. A contest was held where villagers were invited to guess the slaughtered and dressed weight of the ox. Nearly 800 people participated, from experts like butchers to complete novices. While individual guesses varied widely, the statistician Francis Galton, who analyzed the data, made a remarkable discovery. The average of all 800 guesses was astonishingly accurate, falling within 1 pound of the ox's true weight. This collective judgment was more accurate than the vast majority of the individual guesses, including those of the experts. This is the wisdom of crowds in action. It is the idea that, under the right conditions, the aggregated, independent judgments of a diverse group of people can be incredibly smart. What are these conditions? Surowiecki identified several key criteria. First, diversity of opinion. Each person should have some private information or a unique perspective, even if it's just a small piece of the puzzle. A group of diverse thinkers is much smarter than a group of like-minded experts. Second, independence. The individual's judgments must not be determined by the judgments of those around them. They should make their guess without being influenced by a charismatic leader or the pressure to conform. If people's opinions are not independent, the group's errors can become correlated, and the crowd can become collectively stupid. Third, decentralization. Individuals should be able to draw on their own local, specialized knowledge. And fourth, a good aggregation mechanism. There needs to be a way to turn the private judgments into a collective decision, like averaging guesses or a voting system. When these conditions are met, the errors in individual judgments tend to cancel each other out, leaving the underlying collective wisdom. This principle is the basis for everything from the efficiency of market prices to the power of predictive markets and even the logic of democracy. However, the flip side of this coin is the madness of crowds. History is filled with examples of groups, often large ones, descending into collective irrationality. Think of financial bubbles, like the Dutch tulip mania of the 17th century, where the price of a single tulip bulb reached astronomical heights before crashing spectacularly. Think of witch hunts, mob violence, or mass panics. In these situations, the group's intelligence does not aggregate, it collapses. The very mechanisms of social influence that bind us together can, under the wrong conditions, lead to a contagious madness. What transforms a wise crowd into a mad one? The key factor is the breakdown of the very conditions required for wisdom, particularly independence. When individuals in a group are no longer making independent judgments but are instead influencing each other too much, a dangerous feedback loop can be created. This is the world of social contagion, which we explored earlier. If a few influential people in a market start buying an asset, others may follow suit not based on their own analysis, but simply because they see others buying, a bandwagon effect. This pushes the price up, which encourages even more people to join in, creating a speculative bubble based on collective belief rather than intrinsic value. The process is driven by emotion, greed, and the fear of missing out, rather than independent reason. The group becomes a herd, with individuals' thoughts and behaviors becoming highly correlated. When this happens, individual errors no longer cancel out. They amplify each other, leading to collective delusion. A state of heightened emotion is another key factor. When a group is in the grip of a strong shared emotion, like fear, anger, or euphoria, our capacity for rational individual thought tends to diminish. Our ancient, tribal psychology takes over. Our identity merges with the group, and we become more susceptible to the influence of charismatic leaders and the pull of the collective mood. This is the psychology of a mob, where individual moral responsibility can seem to dissolve into the anonymous, emotionally charged energy of the crowd. The mind-fuck of the wisdom and madness of crowds is this profound duality. The very same entity, the collective, can be the source of both extraordinary intelligence and catastrophic foolishness. The group is not inherently wise or foolish. Its character is an emergent property that depends on the structure of the interactions within it. A group of independent, diverse thinkers is a genius. A group of emotionally connected, imitative followers is a mob. This questions any simple judgment about the value of collective decision-making. It is not enough to simply trust the people. We must ask whether the conditions for collective wisdom are in place. The mystery is how to reliably create and maintain these conditions in our complex, interconnected world. In the age of social media, with its viral trends, its echo chambers, and its emotionally charged discourse, the pressures towards herding behavior and the madness of crowds are immense. The very technologies that connect us also provide the perfect petri dish for social contagion, often undermining the independence and diversity of thought required for collective wisdom. As you continue to fall asleep, contemplate the dual nature of the collective. Picture the country fair, hundreds of independent minds silently guessing the weight of an ox, their collective average achieving a near-perfect accuracy. This is the wisdom of crowds. Now, picture a frantic stock market bubble, where each person buys simply because others are buying, their collective belief spiraling into a shared delusion. This is the madness of crowds. Acknowledge that both potentials reside within the very nature of our social existence. Find deep relaxation in understanding this delicate balance. Recognize the immense power of independent, diverse thought, and the dangers of emotional contagion and mindless imitation. Rest peacefully with a quiet appreciation for the moments of collective wisdom, and a calm, discerning awareness of the ever-present potential for collective folly. The nature of social norms. Let us now turn our attention to the invisible architecture that structures almost every aspect of our daily lives, the silent, unwritten rules that govern our interactions and hold our societies together. We explore the nature of social norms. From the simple act of queuing in a line, to the complex rituals of a formal dinner, to the deep-seated taboos of a culture, social norms are the shared expectations about how people ought to behave in a particular group or society. They are the grammar of our social reality, the collective shoulds and should nots that guide our behavior, often without our conscious awareness. But where do these powerful, unwritten laws come from? How are they enforced without police or prisons? And why do we feel such a strong, often visceral, compulsion to follow them? The origin and power of social norms represent a profound psychology mystery, a secret of social reality that reveals how order is created and maintained through a complex dance of shared expectations and the ever-present, implicit threat of social judgment. Contemplating this invisible framework can be a source of deep, grounding relaxation as you fall asleep. Let's begin by distinguishing social norms from other types of rules. Unlike formal laws, they are rarely written down. Unlike moral rules, they don't necessarily pertain to issues of universal right and wrong, but often to matters of convention, for example, which side of the sidewalk to walk on. The primary power of a social norm lies in its sharedness. It is a rule that we expect others to follow, and that we know others expect us to follow. This creates a powerful, self-enforcing feedback loop. There are two main types of social norms as distinguished by social psychologists. Descriptive norms are our perceptions of how people actually behave in a given situation. They are our understanding of what is normal or typical. We learn descriptive norms by observing the behavior of others. If you walk into a library and see everyone whispering, you infer that the descriptive norm is to be quiet. Injunctive norms, on the other hand, are our perceptions of what behaviors are approved or disapproved of by others. They are our understanding of what we ought to do to gain social approval or avoid disapproval. An injunctive norm might be the belief that one should be quiet in a library, even if a few people are currently talking loudly. While descriptive norms are about what is, injunctive norms are about what ought to be. Both are powerful drivers of our behavior. The enforcement of social norms is a fascinating and decentralized process. There is no central authority. Instead, norms are enforced by the members of the group themselves through a system of informal social sanctions. When we conform to a norm, we are often rewarded with subtle signals of social approval: a smile, a nod, a feeling of inclusion. When we violate a norm by cutting in line, talking too loudly in a quiet place, or dressing inappropriately for an occasion, we are often punished with subtle but powerful social sanctions. A frown, a glare, a moment of awkward silence, gossip, or, in more serious cases, social ostracism. The fear of these negative social consequences, The deep, primal fear of social disapproval and exclusion that we have explored is the primary force that motivates our adherence to social norms, often more powerfully than the fear of legal punishment. The mindfuck of social norms is the realization of how much of our daily behavior is governed by this invisible, automatic, and often arbitrary set of rules. We feel like we are making free individual choices, but in reality, a vast portion of our actions, the way we greet people, the clothes we wear, the food we eat, the way we express emotion, is tightly scripted by the unwritten rules of our tribe. These norms operate so deeply and automatically that we often don't even notice them until someone violates them, or until we travel to a different culture with a different set of norms, which can lead to the disorienting experience of culture shock. The mystery is how these complex and often arbitrary rules can emerge and persist, sometimes for centuries without any conscious design or centralized enforcement. The emergence of social norms is a form of self-organization, a concept we have explored in other contexts. A norm can start with a few individuals and then spread through social contagion if it is perceived as being beneficial or is adopted by influential members of the group. Over time, what was once a conscious choice can become an unquestioned tradition, a way we do things here, passed down through generations. Norms provide a crucial function. They make social life predictable and reduce the cognitive load of having to constantly negotiate every single interaction from scratch. They are the shared software that allows a complex society to run smoothly. However, the power of social norms can also have a dark side. As we saw in the context of pluralistic ignorance, a group can enforce a norm that none of its members privately endorse. Harmful traditions, from codes of silence that protect abusers to dangerous social practices, can be maintained by the power of a shared, but privately rejected, norm. Norms can also be a powerful barrier to positive social change, as they can create immense pressure on individuals who dare to challenge the status quo. The first person to stand up against a discriminatory norm, for example, faces the full force of the group's social sanctions. This questions our relationship with our own culture. To what extent should we accept and follow the norms we are born into? And when do we have a moral obligation to challenge a norm that we believe to be unjust or harmful? The process of social evolution is a constant push and pull between the stability provided by established norms and the change driven by norm violators and social entrepreneurs who propose new ways of being. As you continue to fall asleep, bring a gentle awareness to the unwritten rules that have structured your day, the subtle norms of your family, your workplace, your community. Acknowledge the incredible power of this invisible social architecture, the way it makes your interactions predictable and smooth. See these social norms not as rigid cages, but as the shared pathways, the trodden ground of your collective social life. Recognize that you are both a follower of these norms and, through your actions, a co-creator and enforcer of them. Find deep relaxation in understanding this powerful, self-enforcing system. Let go of the need to consciously analyze every rule, and instead trust in the deep, intuitive understanding of the social world that your subconscious mind has absorbed throughout your life, resting peacefully, held securely within the invisible yet powerful web of your social reality. The psychology of trust and betrayal. At the very heart of our social reality, binding our tribes, enabling cooperation, and making all meaningful relationships possible, lies a fragile and precious psychological state: trust. Trust is the confident belief in the reliability, integrity, and good intentions of another person or an institution. It is the invisible currency of all social transactions, the foundation upon which we build families, friendships, economies, and societies. Yet, alongside this powerful force for connection lies its devastating shadow: betrayal. Betrayal is the violation of that trust, an act that can shatter our sense of safety, question our judgment, and inflict a unique and profound psychological wound. The dynamic between trust and betrayal is a deep psychology mystery, a secret that reveals the core tensions of our social existence, our deep need to depend on others, and our profound vulnerability in doing so. Contemplating the delicate nature of trust is a path to understanding the very fabric of our social bonds, inviting deep relaxation through a wiser appreciation for this fundamental human experience as you fall asleep. Let's begin by exploring the psychology of trust. Trust is not a simple, rational calculation. It is a complex blend of cognitive assessment and emotional faith. On a cognitive level, we build trust based on evidence of another's competence and reliability. We see them act consistently and keep their promises over time, and our confidence in them grows. But trust is also a deeply emotional and intuitive process. It involves making ourselves vulnerable, taking a leap of faith, and exposing ourselves to the risk of being hurt. This emotional component is often guided by the subconscious, intuitive processes we have explored, our gut feelings about another person's character. Our ability to trust is shaped by our earliest attachment experiences with caregivers. A secure attachment in childhood provides a powerful, often unconscious, template for trusting relationships in adulthood. From an evolutionary perspective, the capacity for trust was a critical adaptation for our intensely social ancestors. Cooperation in hunting, defense, and child-rearing required individuals to trust that their fellow tribe members would reciprocate and not act solely out of self-interest. The evolution of emotions like gratitude, loyalty, and guilt can be seen as psychological mechanisms designed to facilitate and maintain these trusting, cooperative bonds. Our brains are wired to seek out and reward trustworthy behavior. Neurochemical research has implicated the hormone oxytocin as a key player in this process, often called the trust or bonding hormone, as it promotes feelings of connection and reduces social fear. The prisoner's dilemma, a classic thought experiment from game theory, beautifully illustrates the logic of trust. Two partners in crime are arrested and interrogated separately. If both stay silent, they both get a short sentence. If one betrays the other while the other stays silent, the betrayer goes free and the silent one gets a long sentence. If both betray each other, they both get a medium sentence. The rational choice from a purely self-interested perspective is always to betray, but the best collective outcome is for both to trust each other and stay silent. This dilemma captures the core tension between self-interest and the potential for mutual benefit through cooperation, a tension that can only be resolved by trust. Now let us turn to the dark side of this dynamic: betrayal. Betrayal is so psychologically devastating because it doesn't just cause harm. It shatters our fundamental assumptions about a relationship and about our own judgment. It is a violation of the shared social reality we thought we were inhabiting with another person. The pain of betrayal is often not just the pain of the specific act, but the pain of realizing that our trust was misplaced, that the person we believed in was not who we thought they were. This can lead to a profound sense of disorientation, a crisis of meaning. The world can suddenly feel unsafe, unpredictable, and hostile. The psychological impact of betrayal can be severe and long-lasting, often resembling the symptoms of post-traumatic stress. It can lead to a breakdown in our ability to trust anyone, causing us to withdraw from social connection to protect ourselves from future hurt. We may become hypervigilant, constantly scanning for signs of deception, our subconscious mind now primed for threat. The process of healing from a deep betrayal is often a long and difficult journey of rebuilding not just trust in others, but also trust in our own ability to judge character. The mindfuck of trust and betrayal is the profound paradox that our greatest strengths as a social species are also the source of our greatest vulnerabilities. Our capacity for deep connection, for love, for cooperation, is entirely dependent on our ability to trust. Yet, this very act of trusting makes us susceptible to the profound pain of betrayal. To live a full and meaningful social life, we must accept this inherent risk. A life without trust is a life of profound isolation, but a life with trust is a life open to the possibility of deep wounds. The psychology mystery lies in the alchemy of rebuilding trust once it is broken. How is it possible for a person to trust again after a profound betrayal? It is a complex process that involves the betrayer demonstrating genuine remorse and consistent, trustworthy behavior over time. But more importantly, it involves the betrayed person's courageous decision to make themselves vulnerable again, a process that often requires a deep recalibration of their understanding of the other person and the relationship. It is a testament to the profound human drive for connection that we are, in fact, capable of forgiving and trusting again, even after being deeply hurt. As you continue to fall asleep, bring a gentle awareness to the web of trust that supports your own life. The implicit trust you have in your family, your friends, the countless strangers who follow the social norms that keep you safe. Acknowledge the incredible power and beauty of this invisible force that allows society to function. Now, with compassion, acknowledge the painful reality of betrayal, the risk that is inherent in all acts of trust. See this dynamic not as a flaw in the system, but as a fundamental tension of social existence. Find deep relaxation in a sense of gentle appreciation for the trust you have in your life, and in a sense of compassionate resilience for the times it has been broken. Let go of any lingering pain or fear, and rest peacefully, held by the quiet, foundational, and profoundly human act of trusting in the world and the people in it. The role of shared rituals and group cohesion. We have explored the abstract architecture of our social world, the norms, the beliefs, the identities that bind us. Let us now turn our attention to the tangible, embodied practices that make these abstract structures real and emotionally resonant. We delve into the profound psychology of shared rituals. A ritual is a sequence of activities involving gestures, words, and objects, performed in a sequestered place and according to a set sequence. From the grand ceremonies of a religious service or a national holiday, to the simple, repeated gestures of a family dinner or a team's pregame huddle, rituals are a universal feature of human society. But what is their purpose? Are they merely empty traditions, irrational superstitions passed down through time? Or do they serve a deep and vital psychological function? The mystery of ritual lies in its power to forge powerful bonds of group cohesion, to solidify beliefs, and to create a palpable sense of a shared social reality. This secret of the tribe is not about logic, but about embodied, synchronous experience, a mindfuck that reveals how coordinated action can shape our minds and bind us together in ways that mere conversation cannot. Contemplating the power of ritual can bring a deep sense of connection and relaxation as you fall asleep. At its core, a shared ritual is a form of synchronized, collective action. When a group of people moves together, chants together, sings together, or performs a series of symbolic gestures together, something profound happens on a psychological and neurological level. This is the principle of behavioral synchrony. Modern research has shown that when we move in time with others, it has a powerful effect on our minds. It increases feelings of trust, empathy, and affiliation towards the other participants. It blurs the line between self and other, fostering a sense of a larger, collective we. On a neurochemical level, synchronized activity can trigger the release of endorphins and other bonding hormones like oxytocin, creating a feeling of collective effervescence, a shared emotional high. The ritual is a technology for generating social glue. Consider a military parade. The perfectly synchronized marching, the shared uniform, the rhythmic music, all of these elements work together to dissolve individual identity into the larger identity of the unit. The soldiers are no longer just individuals, they are a single, cohesive entity. This is crucial for creating the intense in-group loyalty and willingness to sacrifice for the group that is required in battle. Consider a religious service. The shared prayers, the call and response, the communal singing, the synchronized kneeling and rising, all of these ritualized actions create a powerful sense of shared identity and collective purpose, making the abstract beliefs of the religion feel more tangible and real. The ritual makes the communion of believers a lived, embodied experience. The power of ritual also lies in its ability to manage emotion and mark significant transitions. Life is filled with moments of profound change and uncertainty: birth, coming of age, marriage, death. Rituals provide a structured, predictable, and shared way to navigate these emotionally charged moments. A funeral ritual, for example, provides a script for grief. It brings the community together, it validates the pain of the loss, it provides a set of actions to perform when we might otherwise be paralyzed by sorrow, and it offers a narrative framework for understanding the transition from life to death. The ritual doesn't erase the pain, but it contains it, providing a shared vessel that makes the unbearable bearable. By performing the ritual together, we reinforce our social bonds and affirm that we are not alone in our suffering. Rituals are also powerful tools for transmitting and reinforcing social norms and beliefs. Because rituals are often highly repetitive and imbued with deep symbolic meaning, they bypass our critical, analytical minds and communicate directly with our subconscious. The regular performance of a ritual, whether it's a national anthem or a family tradition, ingrains the values and beliefs of the tribe at a deep, emotional, and embodied level. You don't just think your group's beliefs are true, you feel them to be true through the repeated, shared performance of the ritual. This is why rituals are so central to the transmission of culture and the maintenance of social order over generations. The mindfuck of ritual is its apparent irrationality from a purely instrumental perspective. In our modern, efficiency-oriented world, we often dismiss rituals as a waste of time. What is the point of the elaborate ceremony? What does it achieve? But this misses the entire function of ritual. The purpose of a ritual is not to produce an external result, but to transform the internal state of the participants and to reinforce the fabric of their social reality. The goal is not to do something but to be something together. It is a powerful technology for shaping the subconscious mind of the group. The mystery is how these seemingly non-functional, symbolic actions can have such profound and lasting effects on our psychology and social bonds. This has deep implications for our increasingly secular and individualized modern lives. Some sociologists and psychologists have argued that we are living in a ritual-poor society, and that this may contribute to feelings of alienation, loneliness, and a lack of community. The decline of traditional religious and community rituals has left a kind of void. We see the human hunger for ritual re-emerging in other forms: the passionate, almost religious rituals of sports fans, the elaborate community-building ceremonies of music festivals, the personal rituals we create for our morning routines or creative work. The deep human need for structured, symbolic, and shared action persists. As you continue to fall asleep, gently bring your awareness to the rituals in your own life. The large cultural ones, holidays, ceremonies, national events, and the small, personal ones, the way you make your morning tea, the special handshake you share with a friend, the family tradition you uphold. Acknowledge these not as empty habits, but as small acts that create structure, meaning, and connection. Contemplate the immense, silent power of shared rituals to bind us together, to create a sense of us on a deep, embodied level. Find deep relaxation in this sense of connection, in the idea that moving together, speaking together, and acting together in symbolic ways is a fundamental part of what makes us human. Resting peacefully, feeling yourself a part of the vast, rhythmic, and deeply human dance of social existence. The psychology of scapegoating. We have explored the forces that create cohesion within our tribes. Let us now turn to one of the darkest and most destructive mechanisms that groups can use to maintain this internal unity, especially during times of stress, fear, and uncertainty. We delve into the psychology of scapegoating. Scapegoating is the process by which a person, or more often, an entire outgroup, is singled out for unmerited blame and is made to bear the responsibility for the problems and frustrations of the ingroup. The scapegoat becomes the designated container for all of the group's anxieties, failures, and disowned shadow qualities. This ancient social and psychological mechanism is not just about simple blame. It is a powerful ritual of purification, a way for a group to cleanse itself of its own troubles by projecting them onto a vulnerable other. The mystery of scapegoating is its terrifying power to transform rational individuals into a persecuting mob, a secret of social reality that reveals the dark side of our search for simple answers to complex problems. Understanding this mechanism is crucial for recognizing and resisting one of the most dangerous forms of us versus them psychology. The term scapegoat originates from an ancient Hebrew ritual described in the book of Leviticus. On the Day of Atonement, a priest would symbolically place the sins of the entire community onto the head of a goat, and then drive this goat out into the wilderness to die, carrying the community's sins with it. This ritual of purification and the transfer of guilt is the archetypal pattern for all subsequent acts of scapegoating. It is a process that promises a simple solution to a complex problem. If we can just identify and eliminate the source of our troubles, the scapegoat, then our community will be purified and our problems will be solved. The psychological drivers of scapegoating are powerful and deeply rooted in our subconscious. One of the primary engines is frustration and aggression. The frustration-aggression hypothesis suggests that when people are frustrated in their pursuit of a goal, it generates aggressive energy. However, it is often difficult or dangerous to direct this aggression at the true source of the frustration, which may be a powerful authority figure, a complex economic system, or an impersonal force like a natural disaster. So, this aggression is displaced, redirected onto a target that is safer and more convenient: the scapegoat. The scapegoat is typically a minority group or an individual who is easily identifiable, has little power to retaliate, and is often already the subject of pre-existing prejudice. Projection, a defense mechanism we have explored, is also central to the process. The ingroup, rather than confronting its own failings, its own shadow qualities, or its own responsibility for its problems, projects these unwanted traits onto the scapegoat. The scapegoat is then accused of being lazy, greedy, treacherous, or impure, the very qualities the ingroup is unconsciously disowning in itself. By punishing the scapegoat, the ingroup feels a sense of self-righteousness and moral purity. They are not just venting frustration, they are, in their own minds, fighting evil. Ideology and propaganda are crucial for facilitating this process on a large scale. A charismatic leader or a ruling elite can deliberately create a powerful narrative that identifies a specific outgroup as the source of all the nation's problems. This narrative provides a simple, emotionally satisfying explanation for complex issues like economic hardship or social unrest. It channels the public's free-floating anxiety and anger onto a single concrete target. This process was central to the rise of Nazism, where Jewish people were scapegoated as the cause of Germany's economic and social problems, a narrative that ultimately justified the horrors of the Holocaust. The mindfuck of scapegoating is the realization of how a psychological defense mechanism designed to protect the individual ego can be magnified into a tool of mass social and political violence. It reveals how our individual need to avoid guilt and feel righteous can be harnessed by larger social forces to create devastating consequences. It questions our faith in collective rationality, showing how entire societies can be swept up in a shared, paranoid delusion, a witch hunt for a designated other who must be punished for their problems. The mystery is the chilling effectiveness of this mechanism, the way it can short-circuit empathy and critical thinking in millions of people at once. The process of scapegoating often follows a predictable, ritualistic pattern. First, the scapegoat is stereotyped and dehumanized, as we've discussed. They are portrayed as less than human, as pests, vermin, or a disease infecting the body politic. This removes the moral inhibitions against harming them. Second, the scapegoat is blamed for a real or perceived crisis. They are accused of conspiring against the Ingroup, of hoarding resources, of corrupting the culture. Third, the persecution of the scapegoat begins, often escalating from verbal attacks and discrimination to physical violence and, in the most extreme cases, extermination. The final stage is the Ingroup's feeling of purification and restored unity, a temporary and illusory sense of well-being achieved at the expense of the victim. Understanding the psychology of scapegoating is a vital tool for social and political awareness. It allows us to recognize the warning signs of this dangerous process in the rhetoric of leaders and in the dynamics of our own communities. When we see a leader or a media outlet consistently blaming a single powerless group for a complex set of national problems, we can identify this as a classic scapegoating tactic. When we feel a powerful, self-righteous anger being directed at an entire group of people, we can pause and ask whether this is a rational response or whether we are participating in a collective emotional projection. As you continue to fall asleep, allow your mind to gently hold this dark yet important concept. Acknowledge the deep human tendency to seek simple explanations for complex problems, to find an external target for our inner frustrations. See the pattern of the scapegoat, the ancient ritual of projecting our sins onto another. Understand this not to feel guilt, but to cultivate a profound and vigilant sense of responsibility, a commitment to resisting simplistic narratives of blame, a commitment to seeing the humanity in all people, especially those who are designated as the other. Find deep relaxation not in the illusion of purity, but in the courageous and compassionate work of confronting our own individual and collective shadow, resting peacefully, with a quiet resolve to break the cycle of blame and to seek understanding instead. The bystander effect revisited in social context. We have previously explored the classic bystander effect in the context of acute emergencies, the shocking finding that the more people who witness a crisis, the less likely any one of them is to help. Let us now revisit this profound psychology mystery and expand its application, viewing it not just as a phenomenon of immediate crises, but as a powerful force that operates within our broader social reality, shaping our collective response to long-term, ongoing injustices and moral outrages. What happens when the emergency is not a sudden collapse on the street, but a slow, unfolding societal problem like systemic poverty, institutional discrimination, environmental degradation, or creeping authoritarianism? The same psychological mechanisms that freeze bystanders in a momentary crisis, diffusion of responsibility, pluralistic ignorance, and evaluation apprehension, can also lead to a state of collective inaction and silent complicity in the face of large-scale social wrongs. The bystander effect in a social context is a mindfuck that questions our sense of moral agency as members of a society, revealing how good people can collectively fail to act against manifest injustice. Contemplating this large-scale social paralysis is a sober, yet essential, step towards understanding our collective responsibilities as you fall asleep. Let's re-examine the core mechanisms through this broader lens. Diffusion of responsibility, the feeling that someone else will handle it, is massively amplified when dealing with large-scale social problems. The problem of climate change, for example, is so vast and involves so many billions of people that it is easy for any single individual to feel that their personal contribution is a meaningless drop in the ocean. The responsibility is so widely diffused that no one feels a strong sense of personal agency or obligation. Why should I make sacrifices? The subconscious logic goes, when my actions alone won't solve the problem. Surely, this is the responsibility of governments, of corporations, of other, more powerful people. This leads to a state of rationalized inaction, where the sheer scale of the problem becomes an excuse for individual passivity. Pluralistic ignorance, the collective illusion where everyone privately believes one thing but thinks everyone else believes another, is also rampant in social contexts. We might privately feel a deep sense of unease or moral outrage about a prevailing social injustice or a corrupt political situation. But if we look around and see that most people in our tribe or our society are going about their daily lives without protest, we might wrongly conclude that we are the only ones who are so deeply concerned. We might think, if this were really as bad as I think it is, surely more people would be speaking out. We misinterpret the public silence of others, a silence likely driven by their own fear and uncertainty, as a sign of public acceptance or apathy. This collective illusion of consensus can be incredibly powerful, silencing dissent and preserving a status quo that many people privately find unacceptable. We conform to a perceived norm of inaction, a norm that is sustained by our collective and mistaken silence. Evaluation apprehension, the fear of social judgment, also plays a huge role. Speaking out against a prevailing injustice, challenging the norms of one's own in-group, or taking a stand on a controversial issue carries significant social risks. You risk being labeled as a troublemaker, an extremist, a traitor to your group. You risk being ridiculed, ostracized, or even facing professional or physical consequences. It is often far safer and more comfortable to remain silent, to blend in, to not rock the boat. The fear of cancel culture from one side, or the fear of being labeled woke from the other, are modern manifestations of this deep-seated fear of social punishment for dissent. This fear can be a powerful force for maintaining silence and collective inaction, even in the face of what we privately believe to be grave moral wrongs. The mind-fuck of the bystander effect in a social context is the realization that our societies can be filled with decent, moral individuals who are all privately opposed to an injustice, yet who collectively allow that injustice to continue because the psychological forces of social reality are trapping them in a state of shared passivity. It is a paradox where the collective is, in a sense, less moral than the sum of its individual parts. It questions the very idea of a silent majority as a force for good. The silence itself can be the mechanism that permits the problem to persist. This is how entire societies can slowly drift into morally compromised states, not through a sudden evil decision, but through the slow, quiet, collective failure to act. The mystery is how to break this spell of collective inaction. The solutions are analogous to those in an acute emergency, but they require a different kind of courage and a longer-term commitment. Overcoming diffusion of responsibility requires individuals and small groups to take a disproportionate sense of ownership for a problem, to decide that they will be the ones to act, even if their action seems small. Overcoming pluralistic ignorance requires what social scientists call preference falsification, to be broken. It requires individuals to have the courage to speak their private truths in public, to say, "I do not agree with this," thereby revealing to others that they are not alone. This is the power of a dissenting voice, which we will explore next. This also has profound implications for our understanding of history. We often look back at past injustices like slavery or segregation and ask, how could the majority of people have gone along with that? The bystander effect provides a chilling, but psychologically plausible answer. For many, it was not necessarily active malice, but a combination of conforming to the established social norms, diffusing responsibility to leaders and institutions, and being afraid to speak out against the prevailing consensus. As you continue to fall asleep, gently expand your awareness from your individual self to the larger social world you are a part of. Contemplate the slow, ongoing challenges and injustices of our time. Acknowledge the powerful psychological forces that can pull us all towards inaction. The feeling that the problem is too big, the illusion that no one else is concerned, the fear of standing out. See this not to induce guilt, but to foster a profound sense of compassionate understanding for the difficulty of collective action. Find deep relaxation in the knowledge that understanding these forces is the first step to overcoming them, in the quiet potential that lies in a single person choosing to take responsibility, to speak up, and to break the spell of collective silence. Resting peacefully, with a deeper and more realistic understanding of the challenges and possibilities of our shared social existence. The power of a dissenting voice. We have just witnessed the immense, often paralyzing power of group pressure, the forces of conformity, obedience, and the bystander effect that can lead good people into silence and complicity. It is a sobering picture of our social nature. But within this picture lies a profound and hopeful secret of social reality, the astonishing power of a dissenting voice. In the face of a unanimous and often wrong majority, the courage of a single individual to stand apart, to speak their truth, to say no, can be enough to shatter the illusion of consensus and liberate others to follow their own conscience. The lone dissenter is not just speaking for themselves, they are creating a new psychological reality for everyone else in the group. The mystery of the dissenter's power is its disproportionate impact, a mindfuck that questions the monolithic strength of the group and reveals the hidden fragility of social consensus. Understanding this power is a key to understanding social change and finding the courage within ourselves, inviting deep relaxation through the contemplation of the quiet strength of individual integrity as you fall asleep. Let us return to the elegant and powerful experiments of Solomon Asch on conformity. As we saw, when a participant was faced with a unanimous group of Confederates all giving the same wrong answer, the pressure to conform was immense, with around 75% of people conforming at least once. But Asch introduced a critical variation. What would happen if the participant was not entirely alone? In one version of the experiment, he instructed just one of the Confederates to break with the majority and give the correct answer. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The presence of this single ally, this one dissenting voice, caused the conformity rate of the real participant to plummet to less than a quarter of what it was before. The unanimity of the group was the source of its power. The moment that unanimity was broken, the spell was lifted. Why is a single dissenter so powerful? They serve several crucial psychological functions. First, they provide social proof for a different point of view. The lone participant is no longer thinking, "It's me against the world." They are thinking, "Wait, someone else sees it the way I do. Perhaps I'm not crazy after all." The dissenter validates the participant's own private perception, giving them the confidence to trust their own eyes and resist the informational influence of the majority. Second, the dissenter shatters the illusion of a unified, monolithic tribe. They demonstrate that disagreement is possible and survivable. They provide a model of courage, showing that one can break with the group norm without the world collapsing. This reduces the normative pressure to conform, the fear of social rejection. The dissenter absorbs the initial shock of being the odd one out, making it psychologically safer for others to follow suit. They create a new, albeit small, ingroup, the ingroup of the dissenters, providing a new source of potential social belonging. This same powerful effect was observed in Stanley Milgram's experiments on obedience. In variations where the real participant was part of a team of 3 teachers, and the other 2, who were Confederates, refused to continue administering the shocks, the vast majority of real participants also found the courage to disobey the authority figure. The example of their dissenting peers provided a powerful social script for resistance, breaking the agentic state and returning moral responsibility to the individual. The power of a dissenting voice is that it reminds us of our own moral agency and our freedom to choose. The mindfuck here is the asymmetry of power. A unanimous group of 7 can exert immense pressure, but a single, confident dissenter can largely neutralize that pressure for another individual. This questions our perception of group strength. A group's power is often a function of its perceived unanimity, which can be a fragile illusion. The dissenter is the one who points out that the emperor has no clothes, breaking the spell of pluralistic ignorance where everyone is publicly conforming to a norm that they privately question. By speaking the private truth aloud, the dissenter reveals the true landscape of belief and liberates others from their isolated silence. The mystery of this phenomenon also lies in the character of the dissenter themselves. What makes some people more willing to stand alone, to risk the discomfort and potential punishment of dissent? Research suggests it can be a combination of personality traits, like higher self-esteem and a lower need for social approval, a strong internal moral compass, or feeling a sense of responsibility for the group's welfare. But it is also situational. The dissenter is often just the first person who has the courage to voice the doubt that many others are feeling. The role of the dissenting voice is the engine of all social progress and innovation. Every major social movement, every scientific revolution, every artistic breakthrough, began with a small group and often a single individual who dared to dissent from the established consensus. Galileo dissenting from the geocentric model of the universe, Rosa Parks dissenting from the norms of segregation, The lone protester standing in front of a tank. These are iconic images of the power of dissent to challenge the status quo and open up new possibilities for the social reality. The dissenter is often punished in the short term, but they are the agents of long-term change. Understanding the power of a dissenting voice has profound implications for our own lives. It empowers us to recognize the immense value of our own unique perspective. It can give us the courage to speak up in a meeting when we believe a bad decision is being made, to challenge a prejudiced joke among friends, or to simply state our own opinion when it differs from the group's. We often underestimate the impact our voice can have. We might think, what's the point? I'm only one person. But Ash's experiments show that being that one person can be enough to change the entire dynamic of the group for someone else. Your dissent can be the permission that another person needs to find their own voice. As you continue to fall asleep, gently contemplate the idea of the dissenting voice. See it not as an act of aggression or contrarianism, but as an act of courage and integrity, an act of loyalty to one's own perception of the truth. Acknowledge the immense pressure of the unanimous group, the comfort of conformity, and then feel the liberating power of a single voice that breaks the spell. Recognize that you possess this power within you. The power to be an ally, to validate another's reality, to create a space for truth. Find deep relaxation in this quiet, internal strength. The knowledge that even in a world that pressures us to conform, the integrity of a single, conscious individual holds a profound and mysterious power to change the social world. Resting peacefully with a quiet appreciation for the silent courage of the dissenter. The nature of social capital. We have journeyed through the deep psychological forces that shape our social lives, our tribal instincts, our biases, our moral foundations. Let us now turn our attention to the invisible, yet profoundly valuable resource that emerges from our social connections. This is the concept of social capital. While traditional capital refers to financial or physical assets, social capital refers to the value that exists in our relationships, our social networks, and the norms of trust and reciprocity that arise from them. It is the goodwill that is generated by our social bonds, a resource that we can draw upon to achieve our goals, to find support in times of need, and to make our communities function more effectively. The nature of social capital is a fascinating secret of social reality, a psychology mystery that questions a purely individualistic view of success and well-being. It reveals that our greatest strength often lies not in what we possess, but in the quality of the we are a part of. Contemplating the richness of this invisible resource can be a source of deep, connective relaxation as you fall asleep. The concept of social capital was popularized by sociologists like Pierre Bourdieu, James Coleman, and most famously, political scientist Robert Putnam in his book, Bowling Alone. Putnam documented a decline in many forms of social capital in America and argued for its crucial importance in a healthy society. We can think of social capital as having several key components. The first and most important is social networks. This refers to the web of connections we have with other people, our family, our friends, our colleagues, our neighbors. These networks are a form of capital because they provide access to resources. A strong network can help you find a job, get advice on a difficult problem, borrow a tool, or find a babysitter. The old saying, "It's not what you know, it's who you know," is a direct acknowledgement of the power of social capital. Within these networks, there are two important types of connections. Bonding capital refers to the strong, deep ties we have with people who are very similar to us, our close friends and family, our immediate in-group. This is the social glue that creates a powerful sense of belonging, trust, and emotional support. Bonding capital is what gives us the people we can truly rely on in a crisis. Bridging capital, on the other hand, refers to the weaker, more tenuous ties we have with people from different social groups, people who are not like us. These are our acquaintances, our colleagues in other departments, people we know from different communities. While these ties are weaker, they are incredibly valuable because they provide access to novel information, different perspectives, and new opportunities. A society rich in bridging capital is one that is more innovative, more tolerant, and better able to solve complex problems through broad cooperation. The second key component of social capital is norms of reciprocity. This is the shared expectation within a community that favors will be returned. It is the spirit of, "I'll do this for you now without expecting immediate payment, because I am confident that you or someone else in this community will do something for me in the future." This generalized reciprocity creates a powerful, positive-sum environment where people are more willing to cooperate and help each other, knowing that the goodwill will eventually be paid forward. It transforms a society from a collection of self-interested individuals into a cooperative ecosystem. The third component, flowing directly from the first two, is trust. A community with high social capital is a high-trust community. People are more likely to trust their neighbors, their local institutions, and each other. This trust is the lubricant that makes everything in social and economic life run more smoothly. It lowers transaction costs. You don't need to spend as much time and money on contracts, security, and legal enforcement if you can generally trust people to be honest and fair. High-trust societies tend to have lower crime rates, more effective governments, and more robust economies. Trust is the ultimate, emergent property of a healthy social fabric. The mindfuck of social capital is its profound challenge to our modern emphasis on individualism and material wealth. It suggests that a person or a community can be rich in a way that has little to do with their bank account. A person with a strong network of supportive relationships and a community grounded in trust is, in many ways, wealthier and more resilient than a rich person who is socially isolated. This questions our very definition of success and well-being. It suggests that investing in our relationships and communities, acts that are often seen as soft or non-productive in a purely economic sense, may be one of the most valuable investments we can possibly make. The psychology mystery of social capital lies in its creation and erosion. How is this precious, invisible resource built? It is built through countless small, everyday interactions. A conversation with a neighbor, volunteering for a local cause, joining a club, showing up for a friend, keeping a promise. It is the slow, patient work of building relationships and fostering norms of reciprocity. Conversely, how is it destroyed? It is destroyed by mobility, which breaks community ties, by fear and suspicion of the outgroup, by the replacement of face-to-face interaction with passive entertainment, and by a culture that prioritizes individual achievement over collective well-being. The decline of trust and community in many modern societies is a deep and pressing concern that stems directly from the erosion of social capital. Understanding the nature of social capital provides a new lens through which to see our own lives and communities. It encourages us to see the value in seemingly unproductive social activities. It highlights the importance of building bridging ties, of reaching out and forming connections with people who are different from us, as a way of strengthening the broader social fabric. It provides a powerful, secular argument for the importance of community, of service, and of the golden rule. It reframes our social interactions not just as personal pleasures, but as vital contributions to a collective good. As you continue to fall asleep, gently bring your awareness to the web of connections in your own life. The strong ties of your family and closest friends, the weaker, bridging ties of your acquaintances and community members. Acknowledge this network not just as a collection of people, but as a form of precious, invisible wealth, your social capital. Feel the sense of safety, support, and possibility that this network provides. Contemplate the profound secret that our greatest strength lies not in our individual independence, but in our mutual interdependence. Find deep relaxation in this feeling of connection, of being part of a larger social whole. Let go of the pressure of individual striving, and rest peacefully in the quiet, supportive, and profoundly valuable embrace of your social world. The psychology of rumor and gossip. Within the intricate web of our social reality, information is the lifeblood. But not all information is created equal. Let us now turn our attention to a powerful, pervasive, and often underestimated form of social communication, one that operates on the fringes of formal discourse yet powerfully shapes our beliefs, relationships, and group dynamics. We explore the psychology of rumor and gossip. A rumor is a piece of unverified information of uncertain origin that is transmitted from person to person, often in a context of anxiety or ambiguity. Gossip is a related, but more personal, form of talk about the social and private affairs of other people who are not present. We often dismiss these as trivial, idle, or malicious forms of talk. Yet, their persistence and ubiquity throughout all human cultures suggest they serve deep and important psychological functions. The mystery of rumor and gossip is how these informal, often inaccurate, streams of information can be so compelling and so influential, revealing a secret of the subconscious drive for meaning, connection, and social navigation. Understanding this hidden information economy is a key to understanding our tribes, inviting deep relaxation through a detached, anthropological view of this fundamental human behavior as you fall asleep. Let's first consider rumor. Rumors thrive under two key conditions: uncertainty and anxiety. When a situation is ambiguous and people lack clear, trustworthy information from official sources, the human mind abhors a vacuum. We have a powerful cognitive need to make sense of our world, to create a coherent narrative, especially when we feel threatened or anxious. In these conditions, a rumor can emerge as a form of improvised, collective sense-making. A group of people will pool their limited information and anxieties, and a plausible, though often unverified, story will begin to take shape and spread. The rumor provides a temporary explanation, a way of managing the anxiety of not knowing. The more anxious people are, the more likely they are to believe and transmit a rumor, as the act of sharing it can be a way of seeking social validation for their fears. The process of rumor transmission, as studied by psychologists like Gordon Allport and Leo Postman, is not a simple game of telephone. As a rumor spreads, it tends to transform in predictable ways. It undergoes leveling, where some details are lost and the story becomes shorter and more concise. It also undergoes sharpening, where certain details are selectively emphasized and exaggerated, often the most dramatic or emotionally resonant ones. And finally, it undergoes assimilation, where the story is distorted to fit the pre-existing beliefs, stereotypes, and expectations of the people spreading it. A rumor, therefore, is not a static piece of information. It is a living, evolving story that is shaped and molded by the collective psychology of the group it travels through. It often tells us more about the hopes, fears, and prejudices of the group than it does about the objective reality it purports to describe. Now let's turn to gossip. While often seen as a negative, malicious activity, many evolutionary psychologists and anthropologists argue that gossip is a crucial mechanism for social bonding and the enforcement of social norms. For our ancestors living in small, interdependent tribes, having reliable information about the character and behavior of others was a critical survival skill. Who is a trustworthy cooperator? Who is a cheater or a free rider? Who is a reliable mate? Who is a powerful ally or a dangerous rival? Gossip served as the primary mechanism for gathering and disseminating this vital social information. It was a way of monitoring reputations, enforcing group rules, and building alliances, all without the need for formal institutions. In this view, our intense interest in the lives of others is not just idle curiosity. It is a deep-seated, evolved instinct for social navigation. The pleasure we often feel when sharing or receiving gossip can be seen as an evolutionary reward for engaging in an activity that is vital for social cohesion. Gossip helps to define the boundaries of our in-group, reinforcing shared values and norms by collectively judging the behavior of others. When we gossip about someone who has violated a social norm, we are implicitly reaffirming our own commitment to that norm and strengthening our bond with the person we are gossiping with. It is a powerful act of creating in us, by discussing a them, even if them is just a single individual. The mindfuck of rumor and gossip is the realization that these seemingly low-status forms of communication are actually powerful, ancient, and perhaps even essential engines of our social reality. They are not just noise in the system, they are the system in many ways. It questions our formal models of society, which often focus on official institutions and rational discourse, revealing the immense power of the informal, the unverified, and the personal in shaping our collective lives. The mystery is the incredible efficiency and adaptability of these informal information networks, their ability to shape public opinion, build and destroy reputations, and enforce social order, all without any centralized control. Of course, this is the dual-edged sword. The same mechanism that can be used to enforce cooperative norms and build community, pro-social gossip, can also be used for malicious purposes, to destroy reputations, to enforce oppressive norms, to bully, and to socially exclude antisocial gossip. Similarly, while rumor can sometimes be a form of collective problem-solving, it is also the primary vehicle for the spread of dangerous misinformation, conspiracy theories, and financial panics. These are the dark sides of our informal information economy. Understanding the psychology of rumor and gossip allows us to become more mindful participants in our own social networks. It encourages us to be more critical consumers of unverified information, to question the source and motivation behind a rumor before we believe or spread it. It invites us to be more aware of our own participation in gossip, to ask whether our words are being used to build connection and enforce positive norms, or to exclude and harm others. It is a call to take responsibility for the informational ecosystem we all co-create. As you continue to fall asleep, bring a gentle awareness to the flow of information in your own life. The stories you hear, the news you share, the conversations you have about others. Acknowledge the deep, ancient human drive to make sense of uncertainty through rumor and to navigate the social world through gossip. See these not just as simple talk but as powerful, subconscious mechanisms for creating meaning and enforcing group bonds. Find deep relaxation in this detached, anthropological perspective. Let go of any guilt or judgment and instead, cultivate a quiet awareness of the power of your own words. Resting peacefully with a wiser understanding of the invisible, informal currents of belief that shape our shared social world. The malleability of social and political beliefs. We often experience our most cherished social and political beliefs as being solid, stable, and deeply rooted in our personal values and rational deliberations. We see ourselves as consistent liberals or conservatives, as lifelong supporters of a particular cause, as people with a firm and coherent worldview. Yet, one of the most profound and sometimes unsettling secrets of social reality is the remarkable malleability of our beliefs. Far from being fixed pillars of our identity, our attitudes and opinions are often surprisingly fluid, susceptible to the influence of framing, context, emotion, and subtle psychological nudges. This is not to say that our convictions are meaningless, but that the way we construct and express them is far more pliable than we consciously realize. The psychology mystery here lies in the dynamic interplay between our stable, core values and the shifting, context-dependent nature of our specific opinions. This mindfuck questions our sense of a fixed political or social self, revealing that our beliefs are less like carved stone and more like a river, its course shaped by the invisible topography of our minds and our social environment. Contemplating this fluidity can be a source of profound, deep relaxation, a release from the burden of rigid certainty as you fall asleep. Let's begin by exploring the powerful influence of framing effects, a concept we've touched upon in other contexts, but which is absolutely central to political persuasion. The way an issue is framed, the specific language used to describe it, can dramatically alter our beliefs about it, even if the underlying facts remain the same. For example, a social welfare program can be framed as a social safety net, evoking feelings of compassion and collective responsibility. The exact same program can be framed as government handouts, evoking feelings of resentment and perceptions of unfairness. A tax can be framed as a tax relief for some or a tax burden for others. These frames work by connecting an issue to different underlying moral foundations and tapping into different emotional associations in our subconscious mind. Political discourse is, in large part, a battle over framing. The side that successfully frames the issue often wins the debate, not by changing the facts, but by changing the way people feel about the facts. Our political beliefs are often less a response to the policy itself, and more a response to the frame in which it is presented. Our beliefs are also highly susceptible to the influence of our emotional state. A vast body of research shows that emotions are not the enemy of reason, but are deeply intertwined with it. When we are feeling anxious or threatened, we are more likely to support authoritarian policies, to show increased loyalty to our in-group, and to be more suspicious of outgroups. Fear narrows our focus and makes us crave security and certainty. When we are feeling happy and secure, we tend to be more open to new ideas, more tolerant, and more creative in our political thinking. Subtle environmental cues that trigger these emotions can therefore shift our political opinions without our awareness. A political ad that uses threatening imagery and ominous music is not just trying to persuade you with facts. It is trying to alter your emotional state to make you more receptive to its message of a strong, protective leader. The malleability of our beliefs is also revealed in our startling inconsistency. Political psychologists have found that people can often hold a set of contradictory beliefs without experiencing significant cognitive dissonance. We might support a general principle, like free speech, but oppose a specific application of it, like a rally for a group we despise. We might advocate for fiscal responsibility in the abstract, but strongly oppose cuts to specific government programs that benefit us. This is because our beliefs are often not organized into a perfectly coherent, logical ideology. Instead, they can be more like a file drawer of different, context-dependent opinions and attitudes. When asked about a specific issue, we pull out the opinion that seems most relevant or is most easily accessible at that moment, a process influenced by recent events, our current mood, and the specific way the question is asked. The idea of a perfectly consistent, political self may be a fiction. We are often a collection of ad hoc, sometimes contradictory, attitudes. The mindfuck of this malleability is its profound challenge to our sense of a rational, stable political identity. We see ourselves as making principled choices, but the science suggests we are often swayed by factors that we would consciously consider irrelevant, like the wording of a question, the background music in an ad, or the mood we happen to be in. It questions the very idea of an informed, rational citizenry, the bedrock of democratic theory. It suggests that our political discourse is less a debate of ideas and more a battle of unconscious psychological triggers. The mystery is not why people disagree, but why we are all so confident in the stability and rationality of our own beliefs, despite all the evidence of their pliability. This understanding also sheds new light on the phenomenon of political conversion or belief change. While we are generally resistant to changing our core beliefs, due to confirmation bias and our connection to our tribes, shifts can and do happen. These shifts are often not the result of a single, powerful logical argument, but a gradual process of changing social environments, personal experiences, and emotional transformations. If you move to a new community, form new friendships, or have a powerful personal experience that challenges your worldview, your social and political beliefs can slowly, and often unconsciously, begin to shift to align with your new reality. The change happens not through a debate, but through a slow, osmotic process of social influence. Understanding the malleability of our beliefs is not a cause for cynicism, but a call for a more sophisticated form of self-awareness and civic engagement. It encourages us to be more critical consumers of political and social media, to be constantly aware of how issues are being framed, and to notice how our own emotional states might be influencing our judgments. It is an invitation to cultivate intellectual humility, to hold our own opinions a little more lightly, and to be more open to the possibility that we could be wrong, or at least, that our views are more contingent than they feel. It can also foster a greater sense of empathy for those who hold different beliefs, recognizing that their views, like ours, are likely shaped by a complex interplay of personal history, social context, and psychological influence. As you continue to fall asleep, gently hold your own social and political beliefs in your awareness. Acknowledge them with respect, but also with a sense of gentle detachment. See them not as absolute, eternal truths, but as your current best guess, your present position in a long, unfolding journey of understanding. Contemplate the subtle, invisible forces that may have shaped them, the frames, the emotions, the social currents. Find deep relaxation in letting go of the need to be rigidly certain, to be perfectly consistent. Instead, embrace a more fluid and humble relationship with your own beliefs. Resting peacefully, open to learning, open to changing, and open to the profound mystery of how we, as individuals and as a society, come to believe what we do. The neurological basis of us versus them thinking. Throughout our journey into the science of social reality, we have repeatedly returned to the fundamental, primal division of our world into us versus them. We have explored its evolutionary roots, its manifestation in minimal groups, and its dark consequences in prejudice and dehumanization. Let us now delve into the very hardware of this instinct, to explore the neurological basis of us versus them thinking. What happens inside your brain when you perceive someone as part of your in-group versus your out-group? Modern neuroscience, using tools like fMRI, is beginning to map the neural circuits that underlie our tribal psychology, revealing a fascinating and sometimes sobering picture. The mystery lies in seeing how deep and automatic this distinction is hardwired into the very architecture of our brains. This is a secret of the subconscious written in the language of neurons, a mindfuck that questions whether we can ever fully escape this fundamental categorization. Understanding this neural wiring is not a sentence to perpetual conflict, but a crucial step in learning how to consciously manage and transcend these ancient impulses, inviting deep relaxation through a neurobiological understanding of our shared human condition as you fall asleep. The brain's response to in-group and out-group members begins almost instantly, far faster than conscious thought. When we see a face, our brain, in a fraction of a second, categorizes that person along various social dimensions: age, gender, and, crucially, race or perceived group membership. This initial, automatic categorization is associated with activity in brain regions like the fusiform face area and the amygdala. The amygdala in particular is a key player. It is an ancient part of the brain, a central hub for processing emotions, especially fear, and for detecting potential threats. Studies have shown that for many people, the amygdala shows a heightened, automatic response when viewing faces of racial outgroup members compared to racial in-group members. It is crucial to be clear about what this means. This initial, fleeting amygdala activation is not the same as conscious prejudice. It is an automatic, unconscious, alert signal, a reflection of culturally learned associations and ancient stranger wariness, not a deliberate, conscious feeling of hatred. However, this initial, unconscious flicker of anxiety or vigilance can serve as the neural seed from which prejudice can grow. It is a subtle, primal ping from the brain's threat detection system, saying this person is different. Pay attention. The differences in neural processing continue in higher-level brain regions. One of the most fascinating areas of research involves the medial prefrontal cortex, MPFC. This is a part of the brain that is heavily involved in social cognition, self-reflection, and, crucially, in thinking about the minds of other people, a process called mentalizing or theory of mind. When we think about ourselves or people who are close to us, people in our in-group, the MPFC tends to be highly active. We are actively engaging with them as full, complex human beings with their own thoughts, feelings, and intentions. However, some studies have shown that when we view or think about people from highly distant or dehumanized outgroups, like homeless individuals or drug addicts in some studies, this region shows less activation. It's as if the brain is not fully engaging its social cognition software. We are processing them more like objects than like people with complex inner lives. This is the chilling neural signature of dehumanization, the failure to see the mind in them. Another key neural system involved is the mirror neuron system. As we've explored, these neurons fire both when we perform an action and when we see someone else perform it, and are thought to be a foundation for empathy. Research suggests that this system is more strongly activated when we observe members of our own in-group compared to members of an outgroup. We literally resonate more with the actions and, by extension, the feelings of people we perceive as us. This creates an empathy gap at a fundamental neurological level. The pain of one of our own is processed with greater immediacy and effective resonance than the pain of an outsider. The mindfuck of this neuroscience is its revelation of how physically and automatically the us versus them distinction is encoded in our brains. Our tribalism is not just a bad idea or a learned attitude, it is a deeply ingrained pattern of neural firing. The preference for us and the wariness of them are, in a sense, the brain's default setting, a product of our evolutionary history and our cultural conditioning. This questions the very idea that we are born as blank slates in a social sense. We seem to be born with a powerful predisposition to form tribes and to process the world through this group-based lens. However, the most important and hopeful finding in this field of research is the malleability of these responses. These neural patterns are not fixed and unchangeable. The brain's response to in-group and out-group members is highly dependent on context, motivation, and experience. For example, the heightened amygdala response to out-group faces can be eliminated or even reversed simply by changing the context. If the out-group member is presented as part of your team in a cooperative task, or if you are primed to think about them as an individual rather than as a representative of their group, the fear response often disappears. This demonstrates that the us versus them boundary in the brain is not rigid. It is fluid and can be redrawn. The very same person can be perceived as them in one context, a rival sports fan, and as us in another, a fellow citizen of the same country. The process of transcending tribalism, therefore, is the process of consciously and deliberately redrawing these neural boundaries, of creating a more inclusive and expansive definition of us. The brain's incredible plasticity is the neurological basis for hope. As you continue to fall asleep, bring a gentle awareness to the deep, silent workings of your own brain. Acknowledge that within its intricate wiring lies an ancient, automatic tendency to categorize the world into us versus them, to respond with more immediate empathy and trust to those it perceives as your in-group. See this not as a personal flaw, but as a deep, evolutionary inheritance, a secret of your own neural hardware. Now, contemplate the profound plasticity of this system. The brain's ability to redraw its own maps, to expand its circle of us. Find deep relaxation in this knowledge, that you are not a prisoner of your own neurology. Your conscious mind, with its capacity for empathy, reason, and compassion, has the power to retrain these ancient reflexes, resting peacefully with a deep and compassionate understanding of the very brain that is, at this moment, constructing your reality and guiding you gently into sleep. Transcending tribalism, the path to a global us. We have journeyed together through the deep, often dark and complex landscape of our social psychology. We have seen the ancient roots of our tribalism, the automatic creation of us versus them, and the troubling consequences of prejudice, conformity, and obedience. Our exploration now culminates in the most vital and hopeful question of all. Are we destined to be trapped in these cycles of division and conflict, or can we find a path forward? Is it possible to transcend our innate tribal instincts and cultivate a more inclusive, more compassionate, and more unified social reality? The quest for transcending tribalism and forging a global us is perhaps the greatest challenge and the noblest aspiration of our time. It is the ultimate secret of our social future, a mystery not of what we are, but of what we could become. This final contemplation is an invitation to find deep relaxation and hope, not in a naive optimism, but in the real, evidence-based psychological tools that can help us build a better world, together as you fall asleep. The journey of transcending tribalism is not about erasing our differences or eliminating our local identities. Our smaller tribes, our families, our communities, our cultures, are a vital source of meaning, belonging, and support. The path forward is not to become a homogeneous, colorless mass, but to learn how to hold multiple identities at once, to be a proud member of our smaller ingroups while simultaneously activating and strengthening our sense of a shared, superordinate identity as human beings. This is the core insight from the Robbers Cave experiment and social identity theory. We must create a more inclusive we. How can this be achieved? The principles we have explored tonight provide a roadmap. The first and most powerful tool is the cultivation of superordinate goals. As the Robbers Cave experiment showed, nothing dissolves the boundary between us and them more effectively than working together on a common problem that neither group can solve alone. The great existential challenges of our time, climate change, pandemics, nuclear proliferation, global poverty, are, in a profound sense, superordinate goals for all of humanity. They are threats that do not respect our tribal borders. Recognizing these shared challenges and fostering a spirit of global cooperation to address them is perhaps the most powerful force for creating a global us. It reframes our relationship from one of zero-sum competition to one of shared fate. The second tool is the mindful application of the contact hypothesis. We must create conditions for positive, equal status, cooperative contact between members of different tribes. This means moving beyond the echo chambers and filter bubbles of our modern world to engage in genuine dialogue and shared projects with people who are different from us. This contact helps to dehumanize the other, replacing abstract, negative stereotypes with the messy, complex, and relatable reality of individual human beings. It fosters empathy, activating the neural circuits that allow us to feel with others, rather than just about them. Every act of reaching across a divide, of listening with genuine curiosity, of finding common ground, is a small but powerful act of transcending tribalism. A third, more internal path is the cultivation of mindfulness and cognitive self-awareness. Throughout our journey, we have seen that our tribal instincts, our biases, our conformity, our obedience, operate largely on autopilot, driven by the fast, intuitive, and unconscious parts of our mind. The practice of mindfulness is the practice of slowing down, of creating a space between stimulus and response. In that space, we can become aware of our own automatic, tribalistic reactions. We can notice the flash of prejudice, the pull of conformity, the urge to scapegoat. This awareness does not eliminate the impulse, but it gives us a choice. We can choose to act from our conscious values of compassion and reason, rather than from our unconscious, evolutionary programming. This is the essence of individual moral and psychological growth. The fourth pathway involves the power of narrative. The stories we tell ourselves shape our social reality. For much of history, our dominant stories have been tribal ones, tales of our ingroups' glory and the otherness of our enemies. Transcending tribalism requires the conscious creation and amplification of a new story, a story of our shared humanity. This is a narrative that celebrates diversity while emphasizing our common origins, our shared vulnerabilities, and our interconnected destiny on this single, fragile planet. This story is told through art, through education, through journalism, and through the everyday choices we make to see the human being behind the label. By changing the story, we change the world. The mindfuck of this final contemplation is the realization that the very same psychological tools that create division can also be used to create unity. The same human need for a tribal us can be harnessed to create a global us. The same capacity for conformity can be used to conform to norms of tolerance and cooperation. The same power of leadership can be used to inspire division or to inspire unity. The human psyche is not inherently good or evil. It is profoundly malleable, a set of powerful potentials that can be channeled in different directions. The mystery is whether we, as a species, can consciously and deliberately choose to channel these potentials towards a more inclusive and sustainable future. This is not a utopian dream, but a practical necessity for survival and flourishing in an increasingly interconnected world. The challenges we face are global in nature, and they demand global solutions, a level of cooperation that transcends our ancient tribal divisions. The project of building a global us is the next great step in human social evolution. As you now prepare for the final gentle surrender to sleep, let your mind hold this hopeful yet challenging vision: the possibility of transcending tribalism. See the walls between nations, cultures, and ideologies becoming more transparent, more permeable. Feel your own identity gently expanding, from a member of your small tribe to a member of the entire human family. Acknowledge the deep, ancient pulls of our divisive nature, but also recognize the equally powerful capacities for empathy, reason, and cooperation that lie within us. Find the deepest relaxation in this ultimate hope, the hope that we can learn to be better than our worst instincts, that we can consciously choose to build a more unified and compassionate social reality, resting peacefully, a citizen of the world, a part of the vast, complex, and beautiful tribe of humanity.